Magic, constantly on the run. Those are the words echoing through Callum Wells' mind as he hides inside a cheap motel room, knowing he had no choice. It was either this, or surrender everything to the guild. A woman in a purple top casually reports her ward is still active, but the thin walls of safety shatter when a thunderous bang rattles the room. Something is coming, and it's already at the door. A masked figure in black looms over a terrified man who swears he knows nothing, and the desperation in his voice says he might be telling the truth. Then the scene shifts. Callum sits across from a sharp-suited, authoritative man who calls his name like a verdict. Callum isn't asking for trouble. He just wants answers. But the man across from him, he's not here to give explanations. He's here to give orders. Agent Thiem of the Guild of Arcane Regulation sits across from Callum with the calm of a man who holds all the cards. He informs Callum he's being detained, suspected involvement in an attack at Sabry's fitness center. Then comes the sentence that changes everything. Magic is real, and Callum Wells is a mage. Callum's face goes pale. In the background, a vision of a funeral flickers, flowers draped over a coffin, mourners standing in silence. A foreshadowing neither of them acknowledges yet. A man in a blue suit describes Callum's aura, extraordinary, invisible to most but not to him. There's something deeply unsettling about being seen by someone who wasn't supposed to notice you. Callum, in a black suit looking disheveled, grabs his head in sudden agony, a sharp sting, a jolt of pain, and staggers away from the conversation, his confusion mounting. The gym looms behind him. The answers are out there, but they come wrapped in danger. Back at the gym before all this chaos, Callum arrives carrying his bag and comes face to face with Mr. Shahi, a massive, red-skinned creature with actual claws, wearing a tank top like it's nothing unusual. And for Callum, apparently it isn't. He shakes the creature's enormous hand without flinching. Shahi, warm and friendly despite his monstrous appearance, asks Callum a favor: keep an eye on a newcomer named Marie who's just started training. A simple request. What could go wrong? Mr. Shahi winks playfully at Marie, the pink-haired girl in her light blue gym top, while Callum makes small talk about Shahi's endless attempts to set him up since losing his wife. Marie blushes, says she really loves the gym. It almost feels normal. And then it isn't. Marie wobbles, her knees buckle. With a heavy FWUMP, she collapses to the floor. Callum shouts her name and rushes to her side, the warmth of the moment gone in an instant. Before Callum can process what's happening to Marie, the gym erupts into total chaos. Gunshots, a robbery. Callum drops to the ground, wide-eyed, shouting in disbelief. An older, white-haired man barks at everyone to get down. Then Shahi, calm, decent Mr. Shahi, snaps. His eyes ignite with a deep red glow. Bullets fly. Sound effects tear through the air, blam, FWIP, ra-ta-ta, as the gym transforms from a place of fitness into a war zone in seconds. Shahi becomes something terrifying, a dragon creature, roaring, engulfed entirely in flames, his body radiating destructive heat as the building around him burns. Callum is somewhere in that inferno, sweat pouring down his face, telling himself he has to stay awake. The fire doesn't care. The chaos doesn't care. And with every passing second, Callum's grip on consciousness grows weaker. Callum comes to on the floor he passed out. Flames still flicker across the wreckage around him. Then he spots Marie unconscious nearby, her pink hair splayed across the ground. He doesn't think. He reaches out, grabs her, and starts dragging her toward safety, the word drag practically stamped across the panel. Behind them, an electrical pipe crackles and spits sparks. They are seconds from something catastrophic. Callum's body screams in protest. He groans, strains, pushes through the pain with raw determination. I can't let her die here. Explosions detonate around him with a deafening FWOSH. Marie curls on the ground, helpless. Callum reaches for her again, his expression twisted with fear and refusal. He won't accept this outcome. But the fire doesn't negotiate, and his body is running out of fight. Then something extraordinary happens. Callum grips Marie tightly, screaming that he needs to survive, and purple energy erupts around them both. A portal tears open in the air. One moment they're inside a burning gym. The next, They're outside. Callum stares at his own hands in disbelief, whispering, "But how?" A suited man appears, snapping his fingers, magical light glowing from his palm, commanding Callum to stay put. Too late. The power inside Callum has already awakened. Back in the chaos, Shahi's fiery rampage continues, flames swirling in explosive spirals as the building suffers under the assault. The man in the blue suit freezes, wide-eyed and sweating, watching the destruction unfold around him with pure shock written across his face. Nearby, an agent in a black suit exhales with quiet relief, straightening his tie. Then a commander's voice cuts through. It's time to move. The situation is far from over. Outside the fitness center, Callum faces the suited agent and demands answers, arms spread wide, voice climbing with frustration. What is going on? Dragon fire. A gym turned battlefield. A portal he somehow opened himself. The agent remains composed, clinical, asking Callum about his classification as if this is a routine form to fill out. Callum throws his hands up. He doesn't have a classification. He didn't even know magic was real until 20 minutes ago. Then something strange happens. Callum's blinding headache simply vanishes. He's almost relieved before a dark-suited figure shoves him from behind, demanding to know what he's doing. Meanwhile, two guild agents huddle around a holographic display of Callum's biometric data, marveling at the fact that he's still conscious after whatever they just subjected him to. He barely noticed it, one of them says. They are already treating him like a file, not a person. The agents debate whether Callum could possibly be a mundane. The answer is definitively no. He not only survived the incident but used spatial magic to evacuate Marie. A 30-year-old unregistered mage from a mundane background is, apparently, indefensible. The senior agent laces his fingers together. This situation is actually straightforward enough to clear Callum of suspicion. There's just one more item of business. The words hang in the air like a trap about to snap shut. The guild wants Callum's service. His architecture career, his clients, his entire life. None of it matters to the man in the black suit and red tie who calmly explains the terms like he's reading from a script. Callum pushes back. He has responsibilities. The agent waves them away. Callum asks if he has any choice in the matter. His green eyes are desperate. The answer is already written on the agent's face. He doesn't. The agent in the blue suit doesn't sugarcoat it. Deserters are hunted by the guild. Full stop. He says it with the confidence of someone who has never had to run from anything. Behind him, fire still burns, a visual reminder of what this world does to people who step out of line. Callum's hands are restrained now, his eyes narrow and burning with something between fear and defiance. The guild wants to own him, and Callum Wells is already deciding he won't let that happen. Callum sweats through his shirt as the reality crashes over him. This is tyranny and it's come to claim him. The guild doesn't ask, it takes. It demands fealty or death, and there is no third option they're willing to offer. He clenches his marked wrist as three formal figures stand around him, one holding a clipboard, all of them treating this like a routine procedure. One of them asks if he's ready for his test, Mr. Wells. Callum's jaw tightens. He is not. They put Callum inside a warded hexagonal box, walls humming with purple mana, glowing symbols etched into every surface. He asks how long this will take. A few seconds, the suited agent says. A few seconds, Callum repeats, almost relieved he doesn't feel anything. Then the energy hits. An invisible sledgehammer of pure magical force slams through his body. He doubles over with a guttural cry, crashing to the ground. The glowing walls don't care. The agent tells him it's almost done. Callum screams that this is going to kill him, and for a moment the panel goes dark as if the universe agrees. When Callum resurfaces, disheveled and gasping in his blue shirt and shorts, the suited man greets him with practiced calm. Back with us, good. Callum asks if that was normal. It wasn't. The agent suspects the test format was entirely wrong for someone of Callum's age and background. Small comfort. While Callum was unconscious, the guild tattooed a mage's mark onto his body without his consent. He stares at it in disbelief, touches his head in shock. The agent says it casually, space mage, quite rare, he'll need a tutor, the cost gets added to his service time. like interest on a debt he never agreed to owe. Callum mutters that the whole thing is a scam, then asks if he can at least go home before being processed. The answer arrives in the form of a suited escort. He's already in custody. Callum tries to shake the escort's hand. He's ignored. He asks what a spatial mage actually does for the guild draft transportation, mostly. His escort says it with the flat affect of someone who finds the question beneath them. Night falls outside as the car tears through city streets. Callum listens, processes, and beneath the surface of that curious expression, something else is forming. A plan. Something the escort should probably be worried about. Callum learns about portal worlds, demoplanes existing between Earth and the multiverse, each one tied to a different kind of supernatural. Vampires, shifters, fae, dragon-blooded, sea monsters. The imagery is breathtaking and deeply unsettling. A glowing blue cave portal, a towering figure with a bone-white grin, a wolf baring its teeth. And then there's the sixth world, empty, his escort says flatly, as if that explanation should satisfy anyone. It doesn't. Back in the safe house, Callum stares out a window at the night, jaw set and eyes distant. His escort drops a folder onto the table marked with a pentagram, dense with guild protocols, and tells him to be ready for the trip to Eastern headquarters tomorrow. Callum sits at the desk afterward, alone, poring through the documents. Mana. Vis. The building blocks of a world he never asked to join. He absorbs every word with the focus of a man building a way out. The escort in the blue suit explains the difference between ambient mana and a mage's personal vis, that specialized internal energy with its own aspect and flavor. Callum, in a green shirt and casual posture, soaks it all in. He wants to learn everything, but the primer he's been handed barely scratches the surface. The agent acknowledges Callum is starting at a severe disadvantage. Most mage children learn this in kindergarten. Then he slides a pen across the table. Start simple. Start now. Callum raises his hand over the desk, fingers spread, and tells himself to focus. Blue energy swirls from his palm, wrapping around a pen resting on the cluttered surface. He narrows his eyes, pushes. The pen shoots forward like a dart, a stabbing motion, precise and intentional. Callum's face breaks into genuine, wide-eyed delight. It worked. For the first time since the nightmare began, something has actually gone right. The triumph fades into something more cautious. Callum reflects at his desk, laptop open, papers piled around him. He's using ambient mana, brute force magic, not his innate vis. It worked, but it's not mastery. He starts researching the Guild of Arcane Regulation, typing steadily, quietly, because an organization this powerful will have skeletons. And then he notices something Agent Sen apparently chose not to include in the draft documents. His eyes narrow. His caution becomes something sharper. The death rate stares back at Callum from the screen, 52.3%. The guild draft kills more than half of its mages. And the deaths aren't random, they fall almost exclusively on mages without powerful family ties or guild backing. It's political. It's an open secret. Callum's gaze shifts to a vision of a dark-robed figure holding a glowing staff, radiating authority and menace, a symbol of everything the guild represents. The skyscraper behind it looms like a monument to institutional violence. Callum slams the book shut. He would rather die than give up his freedom, and he means it. He opens a drawer and pulls out cash, mind already working through the logistics of disappearing. He can't afford a single mistake. One wrong move leaves a trail that gets him dragged back into a system that views him as expendable. He grabs a bag, steps through a door, and the decision is made. Callum Wells is going rogue. It almost goes wrong immediately. A noise Callum curses under his breath, and then Agent Sen, the black-haired escort, is right there, roaring that no one escapes on his watch. But Callum is already gone, leaving Sen to clench his jaw and mutter through gritted teeth that he's going to see exactly how far this rogue mage can run. The cluttered office sits silent behind him. The chase has officially begun. Callum weaves through a crowded plaza, his fitted teal shirt damp with exertion, his mind racing faster than his legs. He has minutes on Agent Sen, maybe. He doesn't know how fast the man is, doesn't know what abilities a pyrokinetic agent brings to a foot chase through a crowd of oblivious civilians. Every second is borrowed time. Every face he passes is a potential obstacle. He needs a plan. He needs it now. Callum catches his breath in a dim alley, gripping his bag strap with white knuckles, whispering to himself that he barely knows how magic works. And yet he needs to do more than just a little of it right now. Behind him, a dark-haired agent strides forward through the shadows with terrifying confidence, a crackling green light in his hand, energy swirling around him like a predator preparing to strike. Callum is outmatched, and he knows it. Near the waterfront, Callum surfaces from somewhere with a FWSH, sweat streaming down his face, jaw clenched in frustration. He can't outrun this man. The green glowing figure in the darkness behind him is relentless, and Callum now understands exactly what he is: a rogue mage. The guild's strongest and most dangerous agents are authorized to hunt him down. The weight of that word, hunted, settles over the scene like a death sentence. A flashback flickers in, a blonde-haired man in a rumpled suit, haunted eyes, warning that there are people out there even stronger than him. Back in the present, the dark-haired agent surveys the plaza from above, his expression cold. He mutters to himself. He has an image to protect. He cannot let it be known that he let Callum slip away. Energy crackles around him as he resolves to handle this alone. FWSH, he moves, fast. In the plaza, Callum runs. The crowd parts around him, indifferent and unaware as the chase cuts through the heart of the city. Then the agent's voice cuts through, "Found you," delivered with a sinister grin that says this is already over. Callum's thought is instant and sharp. He's faster than expected, faster than believed. The motion lines blur as the pursuer closes the distance. Callum needs a miracle, or failing that, a very clever idea. The agent shouts Callum's name across the plaza, calls him a runt who slipped through the cracks. The crowd nearby is completely oblivious, a blonde woman in a dark dress casually wondering if a storm is coming from the sudden wind. But that wind isn't weather. It's the crackling energy of Callum's spatial magic activating, icy blue and green streaks swirling around him, unseen by the civilians. Whatever is about to happen, the whole city will feel it. Callum spots it, a mannequin in a shop window wearing a red and gray coat, a disguise. He breathes aha like a man who just found a lifeline. Meanwhile, the long-haired, white-haired agent tears through the plaza with electric energy snapping around him, demanding to know where Callum went. The sound effect SNASH punctuates his fury. He doesn't know. For the first time in this chase, Callum has the advantage. The agent grabs a blonde-haired man from behind on a city street, "Gotcha, you damn," and spins him around with force. But the blonde man is just confused, gasping how in the world. He's not Callum. The agent stepped on a small bag left on the ground, a decoy, a shed skin. SRRKKK. The sound of a plan working exactly as intended. Callum is already somewhere else. The agent erupts. Standing in the middle of the crowded plaza, surrounded by people who have no idea what they're witnessing, he screams, "You damn rat!" And the transformation is immediate. His professional demeanor cracks like a mask. Green energy crackles and surges around him, his expression twisting into something dangerous. The crowd chatters on, oblivious. But anyone who can see what's really happening knows, a guild agent has just lost his composure. And that makes him more dangerous, not less. Callum now Chase Hall sits in the back of a car, wearing a red hoodie and a mask, the city skyline shrinking behind him. He tells the driver to head to Wesley Farms, take the back roads. No shortcuts, no trails. By early morning, he needs to be deep in the middle of nowhere, off every grid the guild might think to check. The car rolls into darkness. The city disappears. Callum exhales for what might be the first time all night. New clothes aren't enough. Callum finds a grimy urban restroom and stares at his own reflection, the face the guild knows, the face that's now on a list. He picks up a pair of scissors. Snip. Hair falls into the sink. He studies the darker look taking shape in the mirror and decides, black will do. Identity is a tool, and Callum Wells is learning how to use every tool available to him. A green-skinned clerk with white hair and a yellow apron eyes the dark-haired young man across the counter without warmth. Callum, now calling himself Chase Hall, needs a mundane ID and he's ready to pay. 2,000. He flashes the cash and sweetens the deal with an offer of a laptop. The clerk raises an eyebrow at the name on the card. Chase Hall, huh? The transaction is shady, efficient, and absolutely necessary. Welcome to life outside the guild. Back at the guild side of the story, the agents are furious and baffled. How did he escape without triggering a single ward? One agent in glasses and a blue suit reports there are no magical signatures. It was a mundane escape. A window. The man jumped out a window. The dark-suited agent gesticulates wildly, incredulous. Who puts magical wards on doors but not windows? Callum, wearing his new cloak and grinning as he holds his fake ID, already knows the answer. A man who underestimated him. Agent Jane paces and sweats, delivering the worst possible news. Archmage Duval is not going to accept this. His superior, the navy-suited man with the flat cap, responds with dark amusement. He's sure Jane won't mind relaying it personally then. Jane's face collapses. Outside, a mansion glows with teal light, cold, institutional power made architectural. Jane stammers that every available agent is on the search. The Archmage's name alone seems to make the room smaller and the air thinner. Somewhere in an ornate chamber crackling with violet energy, a man with long dark hair and golden robes stands close to a nervous, sweat-drenched agent who stammers that he's even enlisted vampires and shifters to help find Callum. The robed figure's response is laced with contempt. The nervous man grasps at straws. Maybe the spatial mage just decided to live a quiet, normal life. The suggestion dies in the purple-tinged air. Nobody in this room believes that for a second. Archmage Duval lets that suggestion, a normal, mundane life, hang in the air with withering scorn. Nobody wants that here, he says. The young agent, curled beneath him on the ground, in his suit with his curly hair matted with fear, quickly assures him the search will continue. Duval issues a quiet warning, pray it succeeds, because if it doesn't, he will handle the matter himself. In a world full of dangerous people, whatever, handling it himself means should terrify everyone in that room. Purple lightning flashes above as a shadowy figure declares they will be ready for him, whoever him is. Then the scene cuts hard to the Midwest. Blue skies, white clouds, a small, quiet town that couldn't feel further from the chaos of guild politics and glowing runes. A dark blue car sits outside a weathered wooden house. A blonde woman in an oversized sweater and a sheriff with sunglasses study someone nearby. Is this him? She asks. The hunt has a new address. Chase Hall, formerly Callum Wells, leans against the rusty blue car with practiced casual ease. Red scarf around his neck, green eyes reading Sheriff Arthur Langley without letting on that he's doing it. Langley introduces himself and a cheerful blonde named Jessica. Chase shakes hands and smiles. It's charming. It's deliberate. And when Langley asks if he's interested in the property, the old rustic cabin behind them shrouded in mist, Chase's smile doesn't waver. He needs somewhere to disappear. This might be exactly it. Inside the cozy cabin, Chase tells Jessica he might fix the place up, keep himself occupied. She smiles and says he seems quite young for retirement. He says he's not retired, just taking a break for health reasons. It's an almost perfect lie. Sheriff Langley stands in the doorway, hands on hips, listening. Later, alone at the small table in the quiet kitchen, Chase sits with his hands clasped and runs the numbers. 2 years of money left after paying for the house. 2 years to become something the guild can't catch. In his new study, scattered with magical diagrams, handwritten notes, and a laptop glowing with arcane texts, Chase sits with his hands folded and his jaw set. He knows the stakes. If he doesn't master his magic, fear will eventually catch him off guard. Every source he's found says space mages are limited to portals and minor enchantments. He stands. Green energy erupts from both outstretched hands, and he declares with absolute conviction that he doesn't believe that at all. The guild thinks they know what Callum Wells is capable of. They have no idea. Somewhere in the shadows, a dark figure emerges cloaked in a dark aura, clutching something in his hands. his voice dripping with contempt as he questions how one woman could command such absolute monolithic authority. Meanwhile, in the daylight, Callum is already working. He stands in the open air, rocks and grass around him, and admits to himself that his first portal was pure accident, raw, desperate subconscious will. But not this time. His expression hardens. This time, he's doing it on purpose. The swirling purple portal hums to life with a resonant SCHWOOM, and Callum stares at it. His own creation. He exhales slowly, steadies himself, and says the only thing there is to say, here goes nothing. 1 foot lifts, 1 step forward, and then he's through, suspended above a lush green world, the portal behind him, the unknown ahead. It worked. Callum grins, actually grins, clenching his fist in quiet triumph with the cabin visible behind him. He wonders if he can push further. Later, in the steam-filled shower, his body relaxed and his mind still racing. He shakes an empty bottle with irritation. Small frustrations. But then, a dark portal tears open right there beside the shampoo bottles. Even in the mundane, the magic refuses to stay quiet. Shirtless and focused on the wooden floor of his training space, Callum conjures a glowing purple orb, SCHWOM, the energy coiling around his bare hands. He knows this is entry-level, a space ball, no real offensive punch to it. But that's not the point right now. He's testing boundaries. Every book says telekinesis belongs to force mages, not space mages. Callum stares at the orb and quietly disagrees with every book he's ever read. Callum unleashes purple energy from his outstretched hand, and objects around him shatter with sharp cracks. He acknowledges it, unorthodox. He doesn't care. If this cheating method works, it works. By Sunday, he's meditating outside in the forest, tapping into the ambient mana surrounding him, the world itself feeding his power. His eyes are closed. His expression is focused. He's building something the guild never anticipated. Callum's spatial sense expands. He can perceive things with his eyes completely closed, though the range is still frustratingly limited. A purple portal swirls before him. And then, a woman in an orange checkered shawl steps toward it, her footsteps punctuating the air. Step, step, step. Then a sharp snap. Callum's green eyes fly open wide with alarm. The woman's voice carries across the yard, calm but unmistakable. Mr. Hall. Jessica? Of course it's Jessica. Callum pulls his casual smile on like armor, tapping his fingers together as he greets her by name outside the rustic cabin. She mentions the kids cutting through his yard when school starts back up, a perfectly neighborly reason to stop by. He tells her not to worry about it. They part with an easy, slightly awkward farewell, light-hearted on the surface. Underneath, Callum's already running the numbers on how much she might have seen. The moment Jessica is gone, the smile drops. Callum, shirtless and wide-eyed, runs through the yard in a panic. Did she see? 3 words that could end everything. He resolves to suppress any residual magic before it bleeds into the property. Meanwhile, in a sleek modern office far away, a woman in a white lab coat presents her findings to a suited man. The standard test confirmed Callum had never touched magic before, but both of them know that test is wrong. The woman in the lab coat holds up the supply bracelet, and the numbers are damning. The ward recorded 97 thoums of mana absorbed by Callum alone, before the bracelet ever had a chance to register it. The bracelet itself was left containing only 3. The suited man in glasses studies the data with focused intensity. 97 thoums. From a mage who supposedly never touched magic in his life. Something doesn't add up, and they both know it. The woman slams the question down like a verdict. If Callum never touched magic, his vig pool should have been full. It wasn't. She doesn't know what it means, but she's certain it connects to how a 30-year-old mage somehow never noticed magic existing around him his entire life. She stares into the distance and asks the question that no one can answer yet. Just who is Callum Wells? Back at the cabin, Callum exhales with relief, dispersing his accumulated vig with a FUWOOSH. He has no idea they're asking. Callum places a small, glowing ball on a surface, FWOOP, and purple energy spirals outward from it in a vortex pattern he found online. He exhales, perfect. This will erase any trace of magical residue from his yard, keeping him off Gage's radar. But as he watches it work, something unexpected surfaces. Not fear, not urgency, just emptiness. He's learned so much in only a few weeks, and somehow that makes the hollow feeling worse. 6 people in black stand around a coffin covered in flowers, and Callum is among them in a blue suit, one hand gripping a gravestone, the weight of it crushing him. He ran the same day he buried his mother. No time to breathe, no time to grieve. He's been moving so fast that the losses have piled up unprocessed: his parents, his wife, the life he had. The graveyard is quiet. Inside him, nothing is. Standing in the rustic wooden interior of his cabin, Callum wonders quietly if Selin would have liked this place. Then he catches himself. He clenches his fist. The guild wants a workhorse, someone to capture and control. They forced him to run. He didn't choose this. Outside, the small town stretches under a bright sky, ordinary and unaware. Callum stares at it with something forged from grief and stubbornness combined. He will not lose. In a modern diner, a cheerful blonde in red and blue stripes greets Callum, now in a burgundy shirt, asking for recommendations like she's never seen him before. Probably hasn't. But across the counter, a black-haired woman with sweat on her brow is sensing something she can't explain. An unusual energy. Her eyes drift. Then she spots it, a mysterious purple entity hovering nearby, and she whispers in disbelief, asking if that's some kind of dog. The two-headed figure dissolves, replaced by the cheerful clatter of a diner where Sheriff Langley, silver-haired and sunglassed, greets Callum by his alias, Mr. Hall. Between them stands Clara, aproned and bright-eyed, proudly owning her reputation as the best cook in the place. The conversation is easy, casual. But then Langley mentions territory and the word lands differently. Callum confirms no one's crossed his yard yet. He keeps his tone relaxed. His mind is anything but. In the warm interior of the diner, Callum sits across from Langley and another young man, trading small-town pleasantries with a bead of sweat betraying him at the temple. The sheriff mentions strange faces appearing around town and asks Callum, with a smile that's friendly but pointed, to call if he ever sees anything unusual. Callum smiles back, nods. The sheriff has no idea he's sitting across from the strangest face in Hunter Park. Callum's brain is already spinning, tracking Gar, who's watching, when a cheerful blonde waitress appears out of nowhere and calls him Mr. Hall in front of everyone. He nearly chokes. Then his gaze drops to his wrist, the mark. The question mark-shaped brand that the guild left behind. If they're tracking him, it's through that thing. His jaw tightens. It has to go. Callum holds his wrist up and stares at the faint ink mark with shaky hands. It's just a small blob of ink, he tells himself. This shouldn't hurt too bad. He begins pulling at the energy embedded in it, and a swirling FWOOSH of purple bursts from the skin. Then pain, real, searing pain. His face contorts. He yells. The word pulled appears like a warning he ignored. The mark does not want to leave. The energy screams KREGH, dark and violent around his wrist. Callum sweats through it, green eyes locked on his palm where the tattoo pulses like something alive. He grits his teeth and breathes the word, gotcha. A blood-red jagged mark remains on his skin, brutal and raw. He's not done, the rest of the tattoo will need to go eventually. But for now, he tosses the extracted remnant into the fire and watches it burn. Burn, he commands it, and the fire obeys. The next day, at a table buried in papers and a glowing laptop, Callum chases another idea. If his small portal constructs can hold volume, can they disperse it too? Making tiny portals is manageable, but anything larger than a person drains him completely. He sketches out the problem like an engineer. What he needs, he decides, is essentially a portable battery, a way to store and release Vis without burning himself out. A sharp knock cuts through the quiet. Callum flinches hard, maroon shirt, home office, the weight of everything pressing down on him. Someone's at the door. He hesitates, running the risk calculus in his head. What if it's okay? He opens it and finds the sheriff on his doorstep, flanked by a deputy. His stomach drops. He forces a calm greeting. The sheriff says he needs to ask some questions. The word questions lands like a threat. Sheriff Langley removes his hat, a small, formal gesture that somehow makes everything worse. He apologizes for the sudden visit, then asks where Mr. Hall was around 11 o'clock last night. Callum's mind races behind his eyes. Did I do something wrong? He knows he was practicing magic in the backyard. He knows there was something moving in the dark. What he doesn't know is what the sheriff already suspects. 3 a.m. The sheriff asks where Callum was at 3 in the morning and something clicks. Callum lies in his mind's eye, replaying the swirling shadows, the talk about territory, the animal sounds outside his window. He'd been too focused on Gar and the guild to connect the dots. But now, staring at the sheriff's stern face behind those sunglasses, the picture assembles itself. Something was out there that night, and it wasn't just an animal. The sheriff wraps up with a thumbs up and a cheerful directive. If you see anything unusual, call. The imprint suggests shifters, not Gar, not the guild. Shifters and now vampires maybe, in a town that didn't have them before. Callum processes it all with a measured expression, nodding along. His internal conclusion is immediate and unambiguous. Lay low. Hide. Let the supernatural politics of Hunter Park churn without him anywhere near the center of it. He bolts upright in bed. What was that? The words escaping before he's even fully conscious. A sound, movement outside, then, FWOM, a purple mist bleeds through the darkness and Callum's every instinct snaps to attention. He strains his spatial sense toward the source. Whatever is out there is too far for a clear read. And that's the part that terrifies him, that he can feel something but can't see it yet. Flashlight in hand, Callum pushes outside into the shadows surrounding the rustic building. He sweeps the beam through the trees. Nothing. Maybe he imagined it. He almost convinces himself, and then something in the dark makes him shout in surprise. Ack! The next morning, standing with the sheriff and his deputy in the pale daylight, Callum can barely account for what he experienced at 5 a.m. It doesn't feel like enough. And the sheriff's face confirms it isn't. The sheriff keeps his tone measured. Don't get mad, these are just questions. Callum was asleep. He says it clearly. Something happened while he was asleep. The sheriff probes for corroboration. A home security system, maybe. Callum feels the walls closing. He asks if he needs a lawyer. The sheriff insists he's not a suspect, just eliminating possibilities. Callum doesn't have cameras. And even if he did, he couldn't afford the attention they'd bring. The word falls between them like a stone dropped in still water. Murder. There was a murder up the street. Someone broke into Old Man Hardy's house. Callum's face goes pale. He repeats it back in disbelief, the word wrong in his mouth. He's been practicing magic in that backyard constantly, FWSH of energy lighting up the night air. Did someone see? Did something else see? He stammers that he didn't notice anything. Every syllable is technically true. Two men in suits materialize in the scene, one black, one blue, like they arrived from somewhere darker than the street. Callum sits across from them, gulping. He was so focused on Gar and shifters that he missed what was right outside. Something woke him last night. He tells them that. A large animal, he says, careful, vague. The men in suits exchange a look. The sheriff says nothing, but nobody in that room believes it was an animal. Once the door closes, the sheriff turns to his deputy with something heavy in his eyes. He's not telling them everything, the deputy says. But the boy isn't a murderer, they both know that. The sheriff knows something worse. He knows exactly who did this. He's been hoping he was wrong. In the driver's seat of his cruiser, jaw set, he stares ahead and says it plainly. Things are about to get real messy around here. Sheriff Langley slams his fist on the desk. This is Hunter Park territory, not yours. The young man in the dark robe and patterned vest across from him doesn't flinch. He smirks, calmly. A vampire's patience. The sheriff tells him directly, Old Man Hardy was killed by a vampire, and they try to make it look like something else. The robed man leans back and says with calm contempt that he can smell parasites like the sheriff from a mile away. The pale vampire with the long black hair and crimson vest regards Langley's fury with the detached amusement of someone who has never truly feared consequences. He fails to see why any of it is his problem. The sheriff leans forward. He knows it was one of yours, and he intends to hold them accountable. The vampire returns the challenge. They didn't have vampires before Langley came along. Then he smiles, a cold, unhurried smile. "I'd like to see you try." The gray-haired man in military uniform goes rigid with barely contained violence. If the Wolverine pack wants a challenge, he will accept. The vampire in the crimson vest doesn't move, doesn't blink, doesn't need to. The tension between them is a lit fuse. Then a third voice cuts through, directed at Langley, measured and urgent. "Be careful." Just 2 words. But in this room, with this company, 2 words are enough to change everything. In the dimly lit sheriff's office, Langley's fist hits the table again. "Get him out of my face." He's furious. Not just about the insult. They killed one of the mundanes in this town, regular people. And they'll keep killing because the wolf pack doesn't have the numbers to stop them. He couldn't even reach the nest leader, just some lower vampire sent as a messenger. Langley clenches his hand and mutters that if he were just a little younger, he'd drive that nest back to where it came from himself. On the phone now, Langley addresses Alpha Chester, voice steady but stretched thin. He suspects this is bigger than a rogue nest. 5 other towns are facing the same problem. He's sending 2 people to the wolf pack, but without an official challenge, their hands are tied. The young woman beside him, long wavy hair, quiet eyes, gasps at the scale of it. 5 towns. This isn't random. Someone is moving vampires like pieces on a board. But why Winlet? There's nothing here. Langley's frustration boils over. What's the point of the guild's rules if others just come and do whatever they want? The woman with the caramel hair nods, steady beside him. "Keep a sharp eye out." Across the room, a black-haired man in a light-colored shirt asks the question that reframes everything. It's not whether the vampires will kill again. The real question is who is behind them and what they actually want. Callum holds his finances in his hands, literally, staring at a blue document in the middle of a retail store, and runs quiet calculations about emergency funds. The sheriff's voice echoes in his memory, murder and shifty business. He's feeling twitchy. That's the word he uses in his own head. Twitchy. The town that was supposed to be his hiding place is turning into something else entirely. He might have to abandon Winlet altogether. Callum sits at the kitchen table, laptop glowing, jaw tight. His plan to earn money by enchanting items and selling them through Mage forums is dead on arrival. Heavy restrictions, mandatory sign-in, no anonymity. Creating an account is not an option. His hand comes down on the laptop lid with a sharp TAK. To make it worse, the ball-bearing charms fade after a few hours anyway. Every door he tries leads to a wall, and he can hear the clock ticking on his 2-year budget. In a mystical library somewhere, a purple-haired young mage casts with urgent confidence. Nearby, an elegant woman in dark robes reads with growing frustration. Archmage Duval has locked away every advanced application of spatial magic, leaving her to reinvent the wheel. Back in more familiar territory, a muscular man in a green tactical vest jokes with a dark-haired man holding a small package, buying some protection. With everything going on, the dark-haired man laughs, better safe than sorry. The laughter feels thin. It's not just the murders that have Callum sweating. It's the feeling, irrational, constant, that Gar could be watching from any corner. He holds the gun and stares at it. Who knows how effective a bullet is against a supernatural being? He doesn't. But if Callum can be shot, logic says the reverse should be true too. In the dark alley of his imagination, 3 figures in tactical gear open fire with beams of energy. He grips the gun tighter. He hopes logic is right. Yeep, the blonde woman in the purple top nearly swings the mallet before she realizes it's just Callum behind her. The second blonde in beige gasps and scolds him for the scare. He apologizes, amused despite himself, asking if they're twitchy about the murderer too. The answer in their eyes is yes. Very much yes. Callum has stumbled into a conversation about Joan from their church, and suddenly the murders aren't just statistics anymore. They have names and neighbors. In the dim cafe, the woman leans toward Callum with urgency barely contained. There was a second murder last night. He hadn't heard. He hadn't checked. He's been too deep in his own survival to surface. Now he resurfaces into something worse. A pattern, 2 murders. The possibility of a serial killer cutting through their quiet town. The woman in the maroon sweater looks pale. The word serial killer sits in the air between them, and nobody reaches to take it back. The purple-haired young man moves through darkness with a weapon in hand, processing the same reality Callum is. Murder is one thing, but a serial killer targeting mothers in a small town the Langleys love. The Langleys won't let that stand. In a separate, dimmer space, a woman sobs over an unconscious young man lying pale under a blanket, her fear raw and unfiltered. Whatever is hunting in Windlet isn't being subtle anymore. It's accelerating. Callum stands before a bulletin board, notes, photographs, a web of evidence he's assembled himself. Both murders happen within walking distance of his house. At the rate they're occurring, another will happen tonight. He counts the threats out loud in his own mind. A supernatural serial killer loose in the streets and somewhere out there, forces he can't name yet pulling strings. The shadowy figure in the ornate dark coat with red patterns lingers at the edge of his thoughts, patient, watching. A figure with long white hair stands at the edge of Callum's awareness, and he grits his teeth. Either of these threats could show up at his doorstep at any minute. He pushes his spatial sense outward as far as it will stretch, SCHWOOM, feeling the edges of his range. He can't let anything sneak up on him again. Somewhere nearby, another character reaches urgently for supplies, voice tight, pack everything. Enchant the ball bearings. They're not waiting anymore. Callum holds the rifle to his chest in the dim cafe, jaw set. Keep the weapons loaded. If he catches even a whisper of Gar's presence, he disappears, even if it means taking a loss on the house and tightening an already tight budget. Outside, the moon hangs heavy over the street. His spatial sense is growing, pressing further, touching the outer edges of town. More range means more warning. Tonight, he's going to need every inch of it. Jessica watches the street from the cafe window, her expression uneasy. Clara walks toward the store step, small and ordinary against the dark. The sheriff is at his department. Callum tracks them all like a map spread across his spatial sense, their positions held in his mind as he sits with the rifle across his lap. He exhales. It's gonna be a long night. And then, something tightens in the dark and the night begins. He passed out. That's the first thing Callum registers, the gun in his hand, the guilt already rising. He never should have let his guard down. Then Jessica's voice breaks through the haze, frantic, tear-streaked, her blonde hair wild and her blue top darkened with panic. She's gripping his arm. Her face is wet. He's trying to process what she's saying, asking if everything's okay, and the look in her eyes tells him everything is not. Jessica seizes his shoulder and the words rip out of her, barely coherent. They've taken Clara. The shadowy figures in the background aren't imagined anymore. Callum stares at her, trying to catch up, and asks what's going on. But Jessica's trembling, the color gone from her face, and the answer is already everywhere around them. Clara is gone. The thing that's been hunting in Windlet just stopped being a pattern and became personal. Clara crouches in the shadows of the dark cafe, eyes wide with pure animal terror, asking who took her, not knowing the answer is already surrounding her. Callum reaches toward her, alarm carved into every line of his face. Hooded men loom at the edges of the frame, patient and predatory. And from somewhere outside, a voice states it with chilling simplicity. The vampires. The same vampires that have been moving through 5 towns. The same ones that killed old man Hardy. And now they have Clara. So what exactly is Callum going to do about it? Clara never saw it coming. One moment she's moving cautiously through the darkened street, the next, a figure in black steps out of the shadows with a smile that belongs on something that stopped being human a long time ago. He asks her with horrifying politeness to come with them. Clara's expression shifts from confusion to pure terror. And then, the sound. A rush of movement. The trap snaps shut. Jessica is falling apart. Her hands clutch Callum's shirt, tears streaming down her face, the words barely making sense through the sobs they lured Clara in, and now she's trapped inside the nest. Callum freezes, stammering, completely at a loss. But Jessica isn't finished. She reminds him he promised. And Callum's internal voice asks the question he's terrified to answer. What exactly is he supposed to do about this? Callum tries to pull Jessica inside, just by a moment, just breathe, but she won't move. His mind races. Could he even convince anyone he's not a mage? Could he keep his secrets at the vet hidden? Then the panels shift to a wrist gripped by unseen hands, to Clara in a white hoodie, chained to the floor, helpless. The contrast is devastating. There's no time, no choice. Chase Hall unlatches a weapon case with the calm precision of someone who's done this before. Clara sits nearby, still shaking, but her voice is steady enough to confirm, yes, they have her, she's alive. Chase stares at the floor, turning the problem over in his head. He says it plainly. There's no way he takes out a room full of supernaturals in a fair fight. Then he looks at Clara and promises he'll do everything he can. Callum grabs a shotgun from his bag, and a bead of sweat runs down his temple. He drives hard toward the motel, the engine growling beneath him, and his thoughts keep circling back to the same doubt. He hopes this isn't a mistake. The motel comes into view, and something old and instinctive fires up inside him, that feeling. The one he's learned not to ignore. Something supernatural is waiting for him in there. On the motel balcony, a brunette woman in a purple top exhales a slow curl of smoke and murmurs one word, interesting. Inside, Jessica is pressing Chase hard, telling him her family can help. Chase's eyes go wide. He wasn't expecting that. Another figure lingers nearby, bag over one shoulder, eyes on the door. Something is converging at this motel. Multiple players, multiple agendas, and Clara is still inside. The sheriff grabs the blonde woman's shoulder, protective, urgent. Callum jolts, thrown by the older man's grip, demanding to know what he's doing. The sheriff declares they won't involve Gar just yet, and the realization hits Callum like cold water. The sheriff thinks he's one of Gar's people. He tries to correct it. Then everything breaks at once as Callum stumbles backward, shouting in alarm, the fragile stillness of the moment shattered. The white-haired sheriff explodes, demanding the room listen. Callum sits back, almost detached, and cuts straight to it. What can you actually do? The sheriff settles, and in a quieter but no less serious voice makes one request. He wants to be kept in the loop. Then an older, gravel-voiced man drops the real news. The vampires have taken over the hotel down the street. They're making a play for the pack's territory. The brunette woman on the balcony confirms what she's been sensing all week, a presence. The gray-haired sheriff doesn't flinch. He tells them plainly the nest has already killed 2 people. Jessica's face tightens, and she asks the question everyone's thinking: if they knew, why hasn't anything been done? The sheriff's answer is bleak. Evidence. They need evidence before they can move, and the clock keeps ticking. The older man with the white beard is furious. The guild was supposed to keep the peace, and now his pack is being painted as the aggressors. Callum listens, his green eyes narrowing. He asks about agreements, some framework, some protection. But there's nothing. The camera closes in on Callum's eyes, and something shifts. He glances toward the motel, and a thought crystallizes. If Clara is in there, he needs to move now. Purple shadows spiral through the darkness. Callum's voice cuts through. He believes he can reach Clara through mana sensing. But the vampires are claiming she walked in willingly. The sheriff slams that down immediately. It's a lie, and every person in the room knows it. Callum's gaze locks on the chained figure in white, and his voice drops to something quieter, more dangerous. What happens when they get her back? The sheriff outlines the plan. Once they act, they contact Alpha to send in the first of the pack. Callum wants to know about weapons. The sheriff's answer is brutally simple: a clean blow to the brain or heart. A graphic illustration drives the point home with unpleasant clarity. Callum follows up immediately: what about firearms? Because he's already running the math in his head, and a portal mage with a shotgun is a very different equation. One of the wolfmen says it with a grin. They're fast. Landing a clean blow would be a real challenge. Callum absorbs that expression, serious. This won't be easy, but the sheriff gives a single nod. Jessica asks the question, her voice small but steady: can he do something? Callum picks up the rifle. His answer isn't a speech. It's 3 words: he'll bring Clara back. The click of the chamber seals it. But first, he needs a few things. The title card drops, paranoid Mage. In a secured holding room, the gray-haired man in the beige jacket apologizes for the accommodations but confirms everything Callum asked for is already there. Then the older man leans forward, voice dropping. He doesn't know what Callum is planning, but time is not a luxury they have right now. Every second counts. Callum reassures the sheriff. This will all be over in 10 minutes. The sheriff's response is flat and unimpressed. He'll give him 5. Callum walks away, anxiety cracking through the surface, and asks himself what he's gotten into. Then the mood goes darker. Swirling colors bleed into the background as a hooded figure reminds him of what failure actually means. It won't just be the guild coming after him. It'll be everyone. Clara is chained and pleading she saw something and nobody's listening. Callum racks the rifle with a sharp click-clack and focuses. Across the motel, a masked figure in a black suit confirms the ward is still active. Anyone who tries to enter the room, he'll know immediately. He's calm, methodical, and completely unaware that Callum doesn't need to walk through a door to reach someone. A dark-haired man leans against the wall, cigarette trailing smoke, looking almost bored. Then bang, the room erupts. Someone screams about the shifters. Another voice cracks with panic, demanding to know how. And Callum, somewhere in the chaos, states it with terrifying calm. 1 down. Purple energy pulses around him. He's already moved on to the next target. In another moment, a quieter one tucked into memory, Callum sits at a cluttered desk, papers everywhere, thinking through what no one else has considered. Gar's techniques were a starting point, not a ceiling. His pen moves across the page, sketching the idea. A knife thrown in front of him, traveling through a portal, emerging 100 feet away. Portals aren't just escapes. They're weapons waiting to be understood. Callum levels the purple-tinged shotgun and announces the next phase, the vampires. The barrel fires BWOSH and purple energy tears through the air. Voices in hoods start screaming, one shouting to alert the others, another cut off mid-sentence by another bang. Callum doesn't stop moving. He counts the seconds. He has moments before reinforcements arrive, and every one of those moments matters. Callum locks onto Clara through his spatial sense and commits to the most difficult move in his arsenal, long-range teleportation with a target he can't touch. He focuses. The purple energy begins to spiral around Clara's chains. His voice in his head says one word, carefully. Then GLACK. The chains snap. And WO, Clara lifts, enveloped in crackling light, torn free from her prison by sheer will and magic. Callum kneels beside Clara, exhaling. Long-range teleportation worked. He hadn't been sure it would. But before he can breathe properly, a bald man in dark clothing recoils from the swirling purple portal still crackling in the air. Bang! Figures in black flood the corridor. Someone is already shouting orders, sweep the area, they're under attack. The rescue worked. Now comes the part where they survive it. Callum raises his weapon and says it with the eerie quiet of someone who has already made peace with what comes next. No one gets out of here alive. Not even if it costs him every drop of mana he has. The gun fires, bang, and a vampire goes down, crumpled and broken. The laugh that escapes the dying figure is short and hollow. A villain's laugh. Callum doesn't flinch. The shotgun blast paints the corridor in purple energy, and someone chokes out a half-finished curse before going silent. Back outside, Jessica and the sheriff are counting 43, 44, 45 seconds of nothing but tension. Then Jessica screams Chase's name. And from behind the door, the dark-haired young man steps out carrying a bag, expression unreadable, delivering the only 4 words that matter. It's done. She's inside. Clara sits on the floor of the sparse room, blinking through confusion, asking what happened. The dark-haired man tells her flat out, the vampires are dead, all of them. Outside, the motel erupts in flames, the FWOOSH of the fire punctuating his words. He tells them to send the fire department. Clara stares at him and then says something revealing. She can't smell any magic on him. She knows what a mage smells like, and he doesn't register. Callum moves for the door with purpose, telling the sheriff to act fast before the situation spirals further. Outside, he stands beside his vehicle, already thinking about what he recovered from the nest, loot, gear, things to sort through at home. Then Jessica calls after him, breathless, asking if he shouldn't stay with Clara. The moment lightens just barely when she thanks him, and he waves it off with the casualness of someone desperately pretending this was all no big deal. Jessica pulls Callum in and kisses him. Quick, unexpected, genuine. He stumbles backward, face red, stammering that he'll see her around. She smiles and turns back toward Clara. And then, the room behind them, where the older pack members are gathered, cracks open into something heavier. The white-bearded man demands to know what happened out there. His tone leaves no room for softness. Something was resolved tonight, but the questions are just beginning. The sheriff is frustrated, retelling the story to a man in a white suit with long white hair. A stranger came, helped them, told them not to ask questions, and they don't even know his real name. The white-haired man turns it over. Maybe Fae, but the type doesn't fit. He thought he saw a mage tattoo, but there was no magical scent. Outside, the motel burns, and a dark-voiced warning hangs in the air. The other vampires will not be happy with Arthur for letting this happen. Clara is being held close, the kind of embrace that comes after surviving something neither person expected to survive. Meanwhile, the conversation around them turns sharp. Someone tells Arthur to keep an eye on the stranger. If he's a mage, he cannot be trusted. The scene pivots to Callum in a steaming shower, head bowed, water running down his shoulders. He's been standing there for half an hour, and he still doesn't feel clean. He asks himself why he still feels dirty, and then he answers his own question. He killed people today. Sure, they were vampires, but the word people doesn't leave his mouth easily. The flashback hits, bloodied figures, the chaos of the confrontation, the violence that came so easily. He stands shirtless in the aftermath of something he can't undo, and the weight of it presses down with everything it has. Steam curls around Callum as he holds out his hand and watches purple energy form in his palm. The question he keeps returning to, why was it so easy? He's barely started learning magic, and yet he dismantled an entire team of supernatural killers like it was nothing. The thought spirals darker. If he were a villain, there wouldn't be a person on Earth who could stop him. Maybe, he concedes, Gar's restrictions aren't so unreasonable after all. But then the practical dread sets in. The Langleys know what happened. Nothing is stopping them from talking. In a flash of memory, or perhaps someone else's nightmare, a man in a hoodie sits surrounded by the glow of flames, regretting every decision that put him in that basement with the shifters. Callum stares at the motel from a mental distance and thinks, if he'd been smarter, no one would know. He'd wanted to stay in this town a little longer. That option is closing fast. The sheriff steps into the office, visibly anxious, and immediately asks if they're here. His man confirms they're waiting downstairs. The sheriff's next question is the one that reveals his real fear. Please, not a vampire. The reply comes with a tired sigh, a mage and a fae. The supernatural hierarchy is about to make itself present in Winlet, and the sheriff already knows that means the questions are going to get much harder to dodge. Agent Ray Danforth enters the warmly lit kitchen like he belongs anywhere he walks, blonde, tailored, smiling just enough to seem friendly without actually being it. Beside him, Agent Felicia Black stands with her arms crossed and her expression locked shut, dark hair falling in waves over a stark black outfit. They introduce themselves with the polished ease of people who do this often. The sheriff says he hopes they can help sort things out. Danforth smiles. The sorting has already begun. Agent Danforth examines the bodies laid out on examination tables, leaning in close, studying the wounds. He finds them interesting. Every injury, he observes, is more or less identical, and he says with quiet certainty that the sheriff will agree this isn't shifter work. The silver-haired sheriff coughs slightly, uncertain. Felicia Black stands at his side, watching everything, giving nothing away. Someone killed these vampires with surgical precision, and now the guild wants to know who. Felicia Black moves to the examination table without ceremony and places her hand against the side of the unconscious figure's head. Blue energy unfurls from her fingertips, eerie, luminous, impossible. The room fills with the sound of FWOSH and BWOSH as something stirs, something she's pulled from the sleeping mind. Then the silver-haired officer delivers the disappointing news. This one was asleep, saw nothing, heard nothing. But the fact that Felicia can do this at all changes everything about this investigation. The sheriff is spiraling. Someone had to have seen something. Agent Danforth assures him it's all confusion, no clear image. The killer, he notes, was experienced. Then thump. Something hits nearby. The sheriff's explanation is quick and deflecting. Just the structural damage, it's horrible. But Danforth and Black both hear it. And neither of them is the kind of person who lets a thump go unanswered. Agent Langley, young, blonde, immaculately suited, raises an eyebrow with the patience of someone who already knows more than he's letting on. He lays out two possibilities for the sheriff. Either a stranger passed through at exactly the right moment, in which case they'll never find them, or someone local is involved in covering it up. The DU-dun hits like punctuation. Langley smiles just slightly. He's testing the room, and the sheriff's composure is already cracking. The silver-haired sheriff holds his ground. There is no one in this area capable of wiping out an entire vampire nest. He believes it. Meanwhile, across town, the man with green eyes lays out everything he recovered on the kitchen counter. Guns, cash, hard drives. He turns the weapons over in his hands and confirms they're standard, nothing magical. But his tone carries a thread of something else. He's already moved on to the next item. Callum holds up a handful of specialized ammunition, silverite, morsite, corite. He knows what they're for, shifters, warpers, fae, respectively. Someone armed for the full spectrum of supernatural threats. That's not random. Then he unfolds something else, a ceramic slate. Unusual, unknown, clearly not from any local shop. He studies it with a curious frown. He doesn't know what it does yet, but he knows he needs to find out. Callum drops into a chair and stares at the table in front of him, a table covered in stacked cash and gold bars pulled from the vampire nest. His mind immediately starts running the numbers. The house purchase ate into his options more than he'd like. He needs an emergency fund, a real one. His fingers tap the surface as he thinks, phone in hand, already strategizing. Survival, it turns out, has a very specific price tag. Callum stands at the kitchen table with the ceramic slates in hand, turning them over slowly. He's certain of one thing: a mage with access to this kind of equipment didn't pick it up locally. These came from somewhere else, someone plugged into a world Callum is still on the outside of. Then, VROOM. A vehicle outside. His head snaps up. Someone's already here. His face drops. That was fast. Callum sits very still, listening. The engine. And then a heartbeat. Someone's heart close enough to register. His expression shifts instantly. He scrambles, looking at everything laid out on the table, the cash, the weapons, the ammunition, and the thought arrives with full urgency. He cannot let anyone see this. His hands move fast. Time is gone. Whoever just pulled up outside is about to knock on his door. The knock comes. Callum opens the door and finds Jessica and Clara on the other side, Clara in a brown cardigan, warm and alive, the color back in her face. The conversation is casual at first, checking in. But it doesn't stay casual. Clara mentions it quietly. GAR agents are in Winlet to investigate. Callum repeats it back, slower, like he's making sure he heard right. And the look in his eyes confirms what his voice won't say: this just became a problem. Clara pulls Callum into a hug, grateful and warm, telling him she asked Jessica to bring her here. Callum sputters. He insists he wasn't there, didn't do anything. Clara holds the smile and says they understand, but they can't pretend nothing happened. Then the other visitor, a young man in a dark shirt, saves the moment by holding up a food container. They figured Callum couldn't exactly show his face at the cafe right now. A deep, comic growl from Callum's stomach answers for him. They settle around the wooden table and Callum wastes no time. He wants to know everything about these GAR agents. Clara's father already met with them that morning. She delivers the detail that matters most. One of the agents can speak to the dead. They ran the ritual, got nothing. Callum absorbs that quietly, keeping his expression neutral. but his mind is already filing it away, a guild agent who reads corpses. He'll need to keep that in mind. Callum thanks them for the information, and Clara's concern surfaces. Alpha Chester is worried that Callum's help might come with a cost. Callum listens as she explains the hierarchy. The sheriff answers to Chester, who answers up the chain. Helping Callum was, in a way, helping the pack too, so in a sense they're even. But Clara still asks, does this mean they owe him? Callum shakes his head. He didn't do it for a reward. Callum deflects the gratitude with a gentle pat on Clara's head and a quiet request. He'd prefer they never speak of it again. She laughs. The warmth doesn't last. Outside, two men in expensive suits stand in a cloud of dark smoke, and the conversation is colder. An air mage connected to the vampires. A magical signature that doesn't match anything in their files. The blonde in the beige suit turns it over carefully, and then asks anything interesting from the scene. Agent Danforth picks through the debris of the burned motel, his light suit incongruous against the wreckage. He raises the question that's been bothering him: why was there a fire at all? The pack could have called in a standard cleanup. Someone chose chaos over containment. And the bigger question: why were mundane authorities allowed on scene before guild agents? His partner Felicia notes that she's already put out a watch for the recovered items. They will be found. Danforth is certain every shifter in this town is hiding something. He says he's been listening, actually listening, within a mile radius. And yet there's almost no gossip about what really happened. In a town this small, after something this violent, silence is its own kind of evidence. Felicia watches him, still precise. The conversation ends on a name neither of them wants to antagonize: Alpha Langley. Whatever happened here, they'll need to tread carefully. The interviews are almost done. Danforth checks the list. One more name. Chase Hall, 30 years old. They walk to his door and knock. When it opens, the man on the other side looks relaxed, almost amused, asks if someone forgot something. Then he takes in the sight of Agent Danforth and Felicia Black standing on his threshold, and the question shifts. His voice stays even, but his eyes recalibrate. The agents smile. Good afternoon, Mr. Hall, and everything Callum has worked to hide is about to be tested. Callum feels it the moment they flash those badges, magic radiating off both of them like heat from an open flame. Ray Danforth and Felicia Black aren't FBI, not really. They're guild. And they're standing on his doorstep asking about the motel fire. Callum's instinct is immediate: he needs a lawyer. Felicia's smile says otherwise. Callum calls it what it is, a threat, but Felicia doesn't even flinch. Her piercing eyes hold his as she leans into the question about the vampires, her voice low and absolute. And when she tells him he will answer their questions about the fire, it isn't a request. It's a command wrapped in silk. Callum's throat tightens. He insists he doesn't know what they're talking about. Nobody in the room believes him. Danforth exhales a slow, measured sigh and tells them they'll be on their way. The interrogation ends as abruptly as it began. Callum watches them go, sweat still cold on his skin, muttering that it was too close. Felicia had been trying to cast something on him. He resisted it, but as Danforth turns at the door, his green eyes sharp as glass, he delivers one final warning: don't leave this jurisdiction, Mr. Hall. The words land like a gavel: person of interest, official, on record. Danforth's expression in that moment is carved from stone, no warmth, no ambiguity. Callum's face betrays the weight of it, a single bead of sweat tracing down his temple. The message is clear. The guild has its eyes on him now, and they will not look away. The moment the door closes behind them, Callum's heart pounds, a single thump that echoes through his chest like a warning shot. He says it out loud, voice barely steady: he needs to leave. The magic he resisted from Felicia hasn't made him safer, it's made him more suspicious. And the clock is already ticking. More GAR agents are coming. It's not a question of if, only when. Callum whispers an apology to Jessica as he pulls onto the road, the town of Wynut shrinking behind him. He knows GAR will issue an arrest notice. Someone will eventually notice he's gone, but if he sticks to back roads and keeps his profile sense active, he might stay ahead of it. Then something catches his eye: a red pickup truck with a for sale sign. He mutters a quiet, curious sound, a new idea forming. Minutes later, Callum sits behind a different wheel, calm, composed, almost smug about it. The red pickup is his now. He walks into a nondescript office, greeting the heavy-set bald man behind the counter with practiced ease. The ask is direct, a new ID. He was told this man could help. The bald man doesn't blink. This isn't his first unusual customer. The bald man with the beard squints. Does he know this guy? Callum brushes past the question and slides a card across the counter. Covers everything, mundane and supernatural. A beat of silence. Then a green ID card materializes. Denver Brown, Professor. The bald man raises an eyebrow and jokes about wearing fake glasses to sell the role. Callum stares at his new identity and actually considers it. With his new identity secured, Callum has one more errand: magic books for Gay's training. The bald man points him toward Pearson's on 5th and Main, though he's skeptical about the selection. As Callum heads for the red car outside, guilt settles over him. He's vanishing from people's lives without a word. Jessica, Clara, the sheriff, all of them left behind while he runs. He can't just disappear without a word. He owes them that much. Hours later, Callum stands inside a library, a bald man working quietly nearby, and then a swirling purple portal tears open in the middle of the room. The man stumbles back, choking on a half-finished curse. Callum doesn't waste a second. He's already reaching through, passing a message to those he left behind. A sweating man in a light purple shirt makes his request to a stern, white-haired figure. Get word to the Midwest Alpha. Tell him Clara's friend is safe. Don't come looking. The white-haired man's eyes narrow as he relays the message upward to an elder with braids and a long beard who takes the call with quiet authority. And behind him, wolf-shaped shadows wait, listening, always listening. The wolves compare notes. One of them was at Alpha Langley's compound when the stranger arrived. He would know that scent anywhere. The elder with the gray sash wastes no time. He sends 2 younger wolves off immediately, saluting as they go. Then, in a parked car outside a diner, a woman with teal-tipped dark hair turns to her partner and asks the question they're all circling back to: is their only lead really that weird Chase Hall guy? Danforth cradles his coffee and thinks aloud. Being mundane doesn't mean someone isn't protected. Chase Hall might not even know who's watching over him, but the dark-haired woman beside him isn't convinced. Hall lives right down the road from one of the handlers the vampires got to. She floats the theory: what if the vampires tried Hall first and ran straight into his protector? A knock at a wooden door. Mr. Hall. Nobody answers. Nobody home. Danforth and Felicia move fast inside within seconds. Then a violent green vortex of energy erupts from the floor, catching them both off guard. Danforth curses, scanning the empty room. Nothing. No furniture, no personal effects. The place looks like it was never lived in at all. Whoever Chase Hall was, he never really existed here. Danforth combs the back rooms. Nothing. But then he pauses, holds up something small and shimmering. A ring, plain metal, almost faded. But there's a crude enchantment on it, subtle enough to miss if you weren't looking. The short-haired man in the dark coat leans in, curious and cautious at once. Weird, Danforth mutters. Something someone left behind or something deliberately placed. Felicia draws the conclusion calmly. If Hall isn't a mage, he at least knew one. Danforth sighs and nods. Whatever happened here, Hall isn't coming back. He puts out a stop and search on the car while Felicia watches him think. Their next move is obvious. Alpha Langley. This new development has his name written all over it. Inside his red car, Callum rolls his shoulder and winces. The stress is eating him alive. It's already afternoon, another day burned while Gar tightens its net. He talks himself through the urgency, voice low and ragged. Every second he wastes out here is another second the guild gains on him, and he's running out of seconds. Callum parks outside Pearson's bookstore, eyeing the weathered wooden door and the cracked old sign with a mix of skepticism and curiosity. It looks ancient, he notes, but then, when you're a powerful mage, why bother modernizing? He pushes inside, a small bell jangling overhead. The smell hits him first. Old paper, old wood, old magic. He's in the right place. The front shelves look ordinary enough. But Callum feels it, a soft magical signature drifting from somewhere deeper in the store, like heat rising from behind a closed door. Maybe a restricted section. The elderly man hunched at the desk doesn't look up, just grumbles. Callum takes a breath and steps further in, drawn toward whatever that energy is hiding. The old man isn't much for conversation, noted. Callum browses the shelves and pulls out a romance novel, trashy fiction. He almost laughs. Even mages, it turns out, aren't so different. Then he flips to the price tag. $200. The laughter dies instantly. He holds up a second book with the same price and stares at it like it personally offended him. Then Callum finds it, Arcane Defenses, a treatise on shielding. He holds the book like treasure, already flipping through diagrams and dense illustrations with hungry eyes. The old man, suddenly finding his voice, tells him he has to buy it to read it. This isn't a library. Callum closes the book with a small, wry smile. Now he talks. Callum approaches the old man directly. Does he have anything for a beginner mage? An apprentice, he clarifies. The elder squints. The young man seems too old to be a student himself. Callum corrects him, he's a professor. The old man responds with a huff, then conjures a glowing quill and levitates 3 books toward them with casual, effortless precision. Callum watches, quietly envious. Your first focus, Mosey's Encyclopedia of Mage Houses, Portal World's Primer. The elder lays them out in midair, held by magic like it costs him nothing. Callum takes stock of the selection and asks if that's all, just 4 books in total covering beginner magic. The old man confirms it flatly. 4 books. That's the entire world's supply for someone starting from scratch. The register chimes. $1,299.90. Callum stares at the number. The old man stares at Callum. The question hangs in the air, anything else? Callum exhales slowly and shakes his head. He guesses not. The price of knowledge, apparently, is steep, even when the world is trying to kill you for wanting it. Outside the bookstore, 2 wolf shifters in human form pick through the air, no magical residue to speak of. But the physical scent is there, faint but undeniable. He was here. The taller one asks whether they should approach the clerk for a description. They're threading the needle between urgency and Alpha's orders to stay quiet. Every second they hesitate, the trail grows colder. The dark-furred wolf shuts it down, no noise, no direct contact. Alpha sent 2 of them for a reason. Keep it quiet, keep it clean. Instead, they'll pull in a favor from their mundane contacts and get their hands on security footage. Every camera on every major street for the past few days. Then they mention Looping and Lucy, the one with the hacking skills. Lucy, meanwhile, is sprawled in a modern chair at home, headphones on, device in hand, completely unbothered. Miles away, Callum sits in his red car at night, slamming a book shut in frustration. The texts were a bust, mostly scraps, but he did learn one thing: the ceramic plate from the vampire nest was a mage's focus. A glowing symbol confirms it. Small progress, but it's something. Callum can't give up yet. There has to be something out there, some source, some guide, some person who can teach him what the books can't. He turns the ignition with a clack and the engine roars to life. Days later, he's still moving through towns of vampires and shifters and mages, each encounter leaving a mark. The old man at the bookstore still irritates him. Whatever happened to hospitality? Callum wanders past a row of shops, a salon, a tattoo parlor, a fey crystal store, and admits to himself that he hasn't had the time to properly explore any of it. Life has been moving too fast. He's found a whole hidden world layered beneath the mundane one, and he's been sprinting through it without stopping to look. There's almost something funny about that. A bookstore catches his eye, books, new and old. It looks promising. He steps inside, and then he stops. The magic hits him like a wall, thick, swirling, alive. He sweats through the shock of it, muttering that there is a lot of magic in here. Then he sees her, a girl in a green blazer and plaid skirt, surrounded by coiling blue energy, deep in concentration. Who is she? She looks like a college student, Callum thinks, which somehow makes it more surreal. And she's not alone. Two other magical signatures pulse through the room. A ghostly figure wreathed in ethereal energy drifts in the background. Callum steadies himself. Breathe. Nobody here knows he's gone rogue. He's just a customer, just a man browsing books. Nothing to see. An elderly woman at one of the tables glances over at him. Callum's throat tightens. Just a friendly bystander, he hopes. She smiles. Waves. He waves back, forcing a calm he doesn't feel. He turns to the shelves and exhales. Some of the textbooks here look familiar, the same limited supply of magical education available everywhere he's turned. A voice behind him breaks the silence. She's grumbling at the same book he already knows too well, Arcane Defenses. The girl in the green blazer laughs lightly and admits she has no idea who the audience for that book is supposed to be. Callum turns, relaxing slightly. He agrees completely. Half those words feel invented. They bond immediately over the absurdity of it. She's looking for beginner materials. So is he, technically. She asks if he's taking on an apprentice. Callum hedges kinda. Then she reveals her own situation. She's not an apprentice. She's actively trying to skip the apprenticeship system because an archmage named Fane keeps pursuing her, and she wants nothing to do with him. Callum knows that instinct well. The curiosity on his face gives way to something quieter, recognition. She introduces herself as Gay Hargreaves. He introduces himself as Professor Denver Brown. The name sits awkwardly on his tongue, but she buys it completely. Her eyes light up at the word professor. They fall into easy conversation about collaboration, Gay already eager to hand him a list of topics she needs to cover. In the warm glow of the library, it almost feels normal. Callum pushes deeper into the discussion, healing magic. He makes his case with quiet conviction, pointing out that healing isn't inherently harmless. It depends on how you apply it. Gay tilts her head, skeptical at first, but she was educated at a prestigious magical academy, illustrated briefly as a grand, ornate castle, which means she has the foundation to understand what he's suggesting. Callum makes a dry comment about trust fund babies. She doesn't disagree. Gay lights up as she scribbles down the phrase Callum drops, clotting cascade. He explains that he doesn't fully understand how healing magic functions, but if you could amplify the body's natural processes and throw everything else off balance, the implications are significant. Gay stares at her notes with wide eyes. That could actually be useful. Callum smiles back, sharing her excitement. For the first time in days, he feels like a teacher. Callum wraps it up. It's getting late. They should call it for the day. Gay thanks him with genuine warmth, telling him he's been a real help. Then she asks if they can meet again next Friday. He hesitates, clearly caught off guard, before agreeing with a nervous flush. Walking out the next day, he reflects on the strange luck of it, a real student who gives him cover to study basic magic without looking suspicious. Gay, on her end, decides Callum seems like a nice person, simple as that. She heads out looking for more books while Callum makes his way to another store, Book Alley. Inside, a blonde woman at the counter rings him through, bright and casual. He notices she's a shifter without missing a beat. The world keeps revealing itself in layers. He's learning to read them. Back in the cozy bookstore, another man thanks Callum for his help and mentions he's running late for something. Callum's expression shifts, a slight flinch, eyes darting. Something in the exchange feels off. The other man is cheerful enough, reaching into his bag as he talks, but Callum's instincts are on high alert. In this world, friendly conversations can become traps without warning. A woman with a light brown bob and blue plaid blazer smiles and says, of course, have a good day. But the moment Callum steps outside, the smile is gone. She knew something. He can feel it. He has to move now. It was a mistake staying so long. Helping Gay may have cost him precious time, and in his world, time spent in one place is exposure. He has to move fast. But just before he goes, Callum notices something tucked inside a green case near the counter, a folded slip of paper. He reaches in, pulls it out, opens it. A phone number neatly written and above it a name, Alpha Chester. His eyebrows rise. Someone left this specifically for him to find. The question is, how long has it been waiting? In a surveillance room, Lucy, short blonde hair, plaid shirt, headphones, sits beside an older man with a gray braid who's walking her through the footage. Finding Callum was the easy part, he says. Tracing where he was only keeps them one step behind. Lucy's impatience shows as she pushes him to get to the point. On the screen, a red vehicle pulls away from a street corner. He's a ghost, but he's leaving breadcrumbs. Keyboards clatter with rapid urgency as the hacker explains, every major exit in the state covered, cameras hacked, and a list of probable stops compiled by Roy. The conclusion lands hard. Professor Denver Brown was located at a shifter-owned bookstore. The elder with the gray braid leans forward and gives the critical order, don't engage. Mr. Brown will come to them, not the other way around. Lucy gives a thumbs up, boss man, you got it. Then the scene cuts to Callum standing alone at a phone booth in the dark, sweat on his brow as he argues with himself. What is wrong with him? Is he really considering calling Alpha Chester? He's gone crazy. That's the only explanation. But if Alpha Chester could already track him down, then Callum is doing something wrong and he knows it. He makes the call. The older man on the other end, long white hair, braided beard, seated in a quiet office, thanks him for reaching out with calm formality. He offers to call him Mr. Hall, not Brown. The mask is already off. Callum cuts through the pleasantries. What do you want? He is not a mercenary. The older man's tone stays smooth. He wasn't going to suggest that. Alpha Chester lays it out carefully. He sees a potential asset. He can offer things off Gar's records entirely, resources, information, access to an expert on mages. All Callum has to say is what he needs. Callum's answer is immediate, not money, information. Chester confirms it without hesitation, then shows Callum a map. 4 suburbs, targeted by vampires. A political area of concentrated influence. And the job begins to take shape. Callum's voice tightens. 4 towns. He doesn't know if he's ready for that kind of scale, that kind of potential massacre. Alone, he can't stop this. Not yet. In the background, a bound woman lies in a darkened space. A wolfish figure stands nearby, watching. The stakes Callum is being asked to carry are enormous, and Chester's network is already deeper than Callum realized. Is there a time constraint? Chester concedes he was too predictable, but his trackers are already ahead of it. There's a drop-off point arranged, a trash can down the street, an information packet on the vampires, everything Callum needs to know. In a parked car nearby, a muscular man in a black jacket opens the packet, Alpha Chester's name printed at the top. The trap is being set. The question is, who is really being hunted? 800 miles between towns. Callum stares at the map and exhales. This isn't a job he can do quickly by car. Then the idea hits him like lightning, teleportation. He's never tried it before, but theoretically. He steps into a green forest clearing, white shirt sleeves rolled up, conjuring purple energy between his outstretched palms. The footprints of light bloom beneath him, glowing against the grass. He's about to attempt something he's never done before. And everyone, is depending on whether it works. Callum launches himself skyward on a surge of purple energy and immediately loses control. He shoots sideways through the trees, shouting in pure shock, before a massive oak ends his experiment with a bone-rattling slam. He crumples to the ground, breathless. Teleportation, it turns out, is not as simple as theorizing it in a forest clearing. Meanwhile, somewhere on a wooded roadside, a tense trio converges. The hacker, sweating, wound-tight, admits his current plan needs something more to keep him stable. The tall, platinum-blonde man in the sleek suit doesn't miss a beat. He already has an answer. They move forward, the word whoosh cutting through the trees, hinting that whatever waits in that roadside ditch is exactly what they've been looking for. The platinum-blonde agent crouches over a hidden vehicle, his gray suit immaculate against the forest dirt. His partner, dark hair shot through with blue, long black coat, notes that the vehicle has been wiped clean. But the blonde isn't discouraged. It hasn't been here long, he says, and the green glint in his eyes sharpens. They're getting closer. Callum's trail is narrowing. Back in the forest, Callum slams into another tree again. The frustration on his face is real. He mutters that this might work someday, but right now he needs something to stabilize himself. Then the frustration breaks. A flicker of realization replaces it. He knows exactly what he needs. And for the first time in this session, his expression carries something that looks dangerously like hope. The solution comes roaring to life. A sleek black motorcycle trailing vivid purple energy as Callum rockets through a blurred urban landscape. He lets out a yell of pure exhilaration. By applying gravikinesis to the bike, he realizes, he can cover the distance between the 4 shifter towns in a flash. This isn't stumbling through a forest anymore. This is speed. This is a weapon. Callum, fully suited in black helmet and riding gear, rolls to a stop on a dimly lit street flanked by trees and lamplight. He reflects on the mission ahead. Transportation is secure from the vampire nest's reach. Now comes the harder part, understanding what he's actually walking into. He scans the surroundings with cold precision. This looks like the place, the alpha chapter of the local vampire nest, and avoiding unwanted contact is going to be anything but simple. 9. Callum counts 9 distinct vampire signatures inside the movie theater. An earth mage is with them too, wards and shields saturating every inch of the building. The bald, bearded figure scanning the perimeter draws a careful conclusion. As long as he stays off the ground floor, the defenses can be bypassed. The theater looks normal from outside, but inside, something very wrong is waiting. Callum stares at the mage's complex magical bubble, shields layered and interlocking, and feels the weight of the mission shift. He'd love defenses like that, but it makes a vacuum enchantment impossible. For a moment, the thought surfaces. Maybe this job isn't worth it. Maybe walking away from Alpha Chester is the smarter move. Then a ghostly green figure moves in his peripheral vision, and the question of whether to stay becomes suddenly, urgently, irrelevant. Something shifts the calculus entirely. Callum watches a vampire drag a small, light-haired child through the dimly lit terminal, and his entire body goes still. He'd ambushed vampires before, but never truly faced their raw speed up close. Now he sees what they're really doing here. It's not just a nest. They're feeding on children. Purple energy crackles at the edges of the scene, reflecting the rage building inside him. The decision is made in an instant. Callum pulls out his phone and types 2 words, "I'm in." Message sent. He rides hard out of the area, the roar of the engine underscoring the shift in his resolve. The mage, the vampires, the corruption, none of it can be allowed to continue. Whatever comes next needs to be fast, accurate, and leave nothing standing. In a cozy library bathed in warm light, the tension of the outside world feels miles away. Gayle holds up a circular object etched with symbols, beaming. She finally cracked the design. The young man across from her, Professor Brown, leans forward and examines it with a quiet nod of approval. Nice work, Gayle. For one brief glowing moment, everything feels possible. Gayle squares herself in the warm study, clutching the round object tightly. Professor Brown watches from across the room. She's burned through a dozen design plates getting to this moment, and now it all comes down to one attempt. She breathes. Okay, here goes nothing. Swirling magical energy erupts from her hands, the symbols blazing to life with a thunderous VWOOM that shakes the air around them. Gayle's voice trembles as she asks if it's working, the glowing object in her hands pushing back against her grip. Professor Brown's voice cuts through. Keep going. The energy swells. An elaborate circle of magical symbols blazes into existence around her. And then it holds. Gayle erupts in pure joy, throwing herself toward Brown with a grateful cry. In a room full of books and quiet magic, something extraordinary just happened. Professor Brown tempers the celebration with a gentle warning. This is just the first step and there's still a long road ahead. Gayle pouts but grins through it. Their session wraps with warmth. But in the background, barely visible, a figure in a dark hoodie watches from outside, quietly calculating, noting the limited time left to gather supplies. Even moments of triumph cast long shadows. Callum, now in a dark hoodie, backpack across his shoulders, riding his motorcycle through bright city streets, has a plan forming in his mind. He thinks through what he knows about the vampire nests and something clicks. A grin spreads beneath his helmet as he guns the engine with a resonant vroom. Those vampires won't know what hit them. By this time tomorrow, everything will be different. Guns are off the table. Callum refuses to repeat the chaos of the motel incident, but he has something better in mind. Thermite, a compound of iron oxide and aluminum that burns hotter than molten lava, capable of tearing through any material. The imagery that follows is vivid and frightening, a figure engulfed in white-hot flame. And the most unsettling part, it can be made with household items. In a cluttered outdoor workspace, Callum works with careful, methodical precision, scraping rust from an old pipe, grinding aluminum foil into fine dust, mixing it at a 3-to-1 ratio with the grinding rhythm of pestle against mortar. He pours the finished mixture into a red soda can and holds it up. For something this dangerous, it looks devastatingly ordinary. Callum lets himself feel a flicker of satisfaction. An hour later, Callum scans a rocky outdoor stretch of terrain, wiping sweat from his brow. He needs something heavy. His eyes land on a large, dark rock that'll work. The scene cuts jarringly to an interior, a movie theater, where inside the target building, a disgruntled vampire slumps in his seat muttering that the film is terrible. He has no idea what's coming for him. Inside the dimly lit theater-like room, 2 vampires lounge and bicker over dwindling blood supplies, asking whose turn it is to go hunting. The question hangs in the air, unanswered, because in that same moment a swirling energy portal tears open in the middle of the room. Then boom, fire, chaos, the sprinklers trigger, the popcorn scatters, and whatever they were about to say, they never finish it. The explosion rips through the building. A blond man in a maroon jacket staggers backward screaming. A dark-haired man in green shouts for answers. Neither gets them. Outside, shirtless and crouched in the grass, Callum channels raw purple energy from his palms against an array of containers. It's working, he tells himself, and he needs to keep up the assault. He's just getting started. Callum drives the attack forward without mercy, purple energy surging from colorful spray cans as he commands himself not to give them a single second to think. Ended in one fell swoop. An explosion follows. A shadowy figure crumples, barely managing a broken whisper before going silent. The nest is finished. Across town, a bald man sits at a computer, blissfully unaware, declaring the movie on his screen amazing. The contrast is almost cruel. The bald man's phone cuts through his movie night, and his expression collapses when he hears the words, "We're being attacked." Meanwhile, Callum registers growing frustration. His waves aren't activating the way he needs them to. Dark energy pulses around him like a warning. He reaches for a glowing orb, calculating. If bullets won't punch through the mage's thick shield, that isn't his only option. He knows that. Callum reasons through the problem with sharp clarity. The mage is powerful but still human, still bound by human reaction speeds. If he teleports something heavy enough directly above him and clears a path just before impact, the shields won't matter. A purple portal swirls into existence as he gestures, his strategy crystallizing. Nearby, a bearded figure in green cuts himself off mid-sentence. Something just shifted in this fight. Crash. The attack lands exactly as Callum predicted, hard, fast, and absolute. He stands amid the destruction, wiping his brow with a grim kind of satisfaction. Even those shields couldn't save him, he says quietly. He surveys what remains. Everyone's dead. Then just like that, he recalibrates. 1 nest down, 3 more to go. An hour later, he leans against his motorcycle in a peaceful clearing and the calm before the next storm begins. A fireball erupts from a building in the background as Callum sits on a ledge nearby, calmly drinking from a can like it's a Tuesday afternoon. These guys never had a chance, he thinks. Across town, Chester's team is watching the updates roll in with stunned admiration. No reactions from the vampires, no cleanup required. Chester leans back with quiet approval. His boy does clean work. But another update is already coming in. Callum doesn't stop. Chester grips his phone with wide eyes. How is this possible? Callum, already helmeted and back on the motorcycle, has his sights set on nest number 3. He runs a quick scan, a dozen vampires inside plus one heavily shielded mage. He absorbs the numbers without flinching. Then something else registers, something beyond the vampires, something unexpected. He narrows his violet eyes. Wait, there's something else. 2 figures, human, not supernatural. Callum's scan picks them up huddled in a dark corner of the facility, one in a blue shirt, one in red, both clearly prisoners. His mind races. He can't just leave them there. But extracting them without exposing himself is an entirely different kind of problem. A motorcycle helmeted silhouette lingers nearby. The clock is ticking. And Callum just added a rescue to his mission. The man in the blue shirt holds the frightened woman close, trying to keep her calm in the dark. They don't know what's happening around them, only that the building is dangerous and someone needs to come for them. Callum watches from outside, jaw tight, wrestling with the same impossible question. How do you get them out without giving yourself away? He stares at the purple glow framing the scene. He'll figure it out. He has to. Callum knows that taking the prisoners with him could expose everything, his identity, his methods, his entire operation. But abandoning them isn't an option. He spots a fast food restaurant a couple of blocks over, close enough for the shifters to reach quickly. He commits to the plan, energy swirling around him with twin SCHWOOM and VWOOM bursts as the woman in purple-top chains watches him move with desperate hope in her eyes. Callum locks in on the mission sequence with tactical precision. Drop the prisoners somewhere safe, then eliminate the remaining nests. He mentally maps the weak points and flammability of each target as purple energy pulses across a cityscape in the background. Nearby, 2 suited men talk casually, oblivious. The contrast between their normalcy and Callum's cold focus couldn't be sharper. He's already moving to the next step. In a dim room lined with colorful canisters, Callum grips a red thermite charge in gloved hands. 6 of them, he decides, should be enough. He steps back and opens a portal, purple energy spiraling into existence with a low hum. The canisters crackle behind him, charged and ready. Then blaze. The sequence ignites. Whatever was left of his hesitation burns away with it. He's committed to the end now. Inside the prison-like room, the smoke alarm shrieks to life. The man in the blue shirt grabs the woman in red and pulls her toward the door. It won't budge, the bars holding fast no matter how hard he wrenches against them. Smoke fills the air. And then, through the haze, a masked figure in a black hooded cloak appears. His voice is quiet. "Are you okay?" It is not a comforting entrance. The woman with glasses stares at Callum in shock, demanding to know who he is. He doesn't answer. He tells them to face forward and close their eyes. He tells them he needs their trust. They hesitate. Then he snaps his fingers and purple energy blooms around all 3 of them, pulling a breathless woe from her lips. The VWOOM that follows seals the deal. They're going somewhere else. Fast. A swirling purple portal hovers above a bathroom floor, and suddenly 2 confused, shaken people are sitting next to it, the man in the dark shirt, the woman in the maroon sweater. Callum materializes beside them just long enough to give instructions. Wait here until someone comes. Then she asks who he is. He tells them to forget him. The portal swallows him whole before they can ask anything else. Callum surfaces in the dark with thermite charges ready and a weight he wasn't expecting sitting in his chest. He feels bad for those 2, all those questions left unanswered. He lets himself wonder just briefly whether he can trust Chester to handle them safely. He'll have to check later, but first, there are still nests to burn. He pushes the emotion aside and gets back to work. The energy expenditure is showing. Dark purple mist curls around Callum as the toll of so many back-to-back operations weighs on him. But it was worth it, he says, not just for the deal with Chester, but because 2 innocent people get to live another day. The scene flashes back, the man in blue and the woman in red, smiling in relief. Minutes earlier they were captives. Now they're alive. That matters. In the dimly lit room, Chester's inner circle strategizes. Jasper's silver hair slicked back, cigarette in hand, muses on the mysteries of fey magic. The boss with gray braids leans forward, mind working. Whoever this person is, he's meticulous about limiting his phone use. A blonde girl in the corner shrugs. She couldn't pin a thing on him. Chester's eyes sharpen. Imagine, he says, if he could move his own men at that speed. A blonde woman in a white hoodie floats an idea across the room. Maybe their mystery operative needs someone working the intel angle, someone on the tech side. Chester hesitates, not wanting to compromise her position within GAR. She waves off the concern. They don't pay attention to non-mages like her. She'll handle it. Then Chester's phone buzzes, and the name on the other end wipes the casual mood from the room instantly. Anton. On the other end of the line, a dark-jacketed man speaks from an ornately decorated room bathed in red stained glass light. His tone is furious. The attack on their nests is a clear violation of the Accords, and GAR will hear about this. He's withdrawing from Chester's territory, he declares. But there's venom beneath the retreat. Don't think I'm beat, Chester. Outside, a shadowy figure launches with a VROOM. The threat is already in motion. The aftermath of Callum's strike zones is grim and clinical. Debris-strewn rooms, figures in white bodysuits cataloging the destruction. The platinum blonde agent in his beige suit surveys the wreckage with cool admiration. He did a hell of a job, he says. His partner in black and teal tilts her head. Same guy, you think? Definitely, he replies. The methodology is different nest to nest, but the precision is unmistakable. Someone very dangerous is out there. In the dim investigation area, a masked figure in white and green practically bounces with excitement. He found one. The platinum blonde agent takes the tiny ball bearing in his gloved hand and holds it up like a trophy. Their culprit's signature. He still can't work out exactly what it does, but it's distinctive. Whoever left this behind wanted them to have no idea who he is. But every crime scene has a calling card, and now they have his. The blonde agent steps aside at his partner's request. Her siren abilities can't work in front of others, even their own team. He obliges with a knowing look. She turns to the topic of the first nest. Whoever struck it acted on impulse, driven by something personal. Someone had taken a young person they cared about, and when they found out, they used a gun in the heat of the moment. This attacker isn't just skilled, they have a heart. A gloved hand lifts a clear evidence bag, a pair of shoes, bagged meticulously. The subsequent nests, the blonde agent explains, were a different story entirely. Planned, prepared, deliberate. He recommends speaking with Alpha Chester directly. Both criminal incidents fell within his territory. The dark-haired woman beside him tightens her expression. And in the final panel, Chester himself looms against a fiery backdrop, older, weathered, unreadable. The scene broadens into something bigger. A blue-skinned Fey king stands flanked by figures of dark power, while outside a formal conference room, the blonde agent and his teal-streaked partner are welcomed in by Chester, white-haired, composed, giving nothing away. The agent cuts to the point with careful diplomacy. They're here for answers. Chester gestures graciously to the table. The game of questions and half-truths is about to begin. Chester fields questions in the investigation room with practiced ease, turquoise pendant catching the dim light, beard trimmed, demeanor almost amused. The blonde agent watches him with narrowed eyes, calling his answers well-rehearsed under his breath. It's a sparring match dressed in pleasantries. Then Chester's phone buzzes. He glances at it, excuses himself. Whatever just came through is more urgent than the agent sitting across from him. Chester hangs up the call without ceremony. He has guests, he says, and pivots smoothly back to the blonde agent. The agent barely blinks. But 1 hour later, somewhere else entirely, a boy in a red hoodie is standing at a row of lockers. "This is number 4, he mutters to himself and pries it open with focused calm. Pieces of a broader plan are clicking into place, one locker at a time. Callum has scattered the loot from the vampire nests across multiple hidden locations, everything accessible through teleportation, nothing incriminating on his person if he stopped in the street. It's clean. Careful. Then Chester's voice fills his ear. The dark agents arrived, and they weren't happy with the scenes left behind. The older man's tone carries the kind of tension that means, this is far from over. Callum leans against the lockers with a smirk. He wants to know if Chester sold him out to the agents. Chester's answer is careful and measured. He didn't. And as for payment, Chester has 2 introductions to offer instead of conventional currency. The first, a mage expert named Harry, serious-faced and quietly formidable. The second introduction is still coming, and in this world, knowledge is the most dangerous coin of all. Chester's side of the call is surprisingly relaxed, and Callum, in a maroon hoodie, is almost enjoying himself. A young blonde woman cuts into the conversation, declaring herself a fan of the way he kills things and pitching her skills on the electronic side. She works with Chester, but not for him. She clarifies the distinction with a grin. Callum's smirk fades just slightly. Can he trust her? That question doesn't have an easy answer yet. The call winds down into banter and barely disguised tension. The blonde, codenamed Moneypenny, apparently has Callum's attention whether he likes it or not. Chester plays it cool, reining in the flirting and steering back to business. She'll fill Callum in on the mages. Grimoires lay open on Chester's desk as he speaks. Something larger is being assembled here, piece by piece, name by name. And Callum, whether he chose this or not, is now very much part of it. The older man's warning lands like a blade. A vampire called the Master, not just powerful but the most dangerous of his kind. Callum gulps, absorbing every word. And then the scene cuts to something that makes the warning real. A figure in dark clothing crushing a bloody heart in his bare fist. This isn't a threat. This is a promise. Back in his dimly lit room, Callum sits cross-legged on the floor, surrounded by handwritten grimoires from Chester's mage contact. His laptop glows against his face as he pores over every page. Spatial magic, he discovers, is a mystery even to the experts, absent from every bookstore, every standard curriculum. He's trying to learn something the world has practically erased. Sundown arrives and Callum glances at the time. Right, he should call that Moneypenny girl. But before he can dial, his phone buzzes with an incoming call from Brown. Meanwhile, on the other end of what becomes a very different call, the light-haired girl in her BERVANA shirt is already smiling, wondering if he actually likes her. The flirtation starts immediately, and Callum, caught off guard, fumbles into denial. Lucy offers to send a price list for her work with Chester, but only if the job is interesting enough. Callum is stunned to discover she's fully human. No magic, no shifter abilities, just the child of mage parents who didn't inherit the spark. Then his phone dings. He looks down at the screen, a text from Lucille Harper, itemized IT services. He stares at it. Wrong contact. Maybe. Callum cuts to the chase. Either Chester can protect him or nothing will. But Lucy pushes back and the conversation shifts into something heavier. Chester, she explains, is practically royalty in this world. The imagery that follows says it all. Chester standing unbothered amid roaring flames. He could murder a dozen people and walk away with nothing but a slap on the wrist. Callum's skepticism fades slowly. Lucy breaks down the pecking order. The only things that could threaten Chester's protection would be an archmage or a master vampire. And that name surfaces again, Anton Lavigne. Callum's expression darkens as the implication sinks in. If Lavigne operates on the level of an archmage, then every move Callum makes needs to be surgical. The scene ends with a duffel bag unzipped, a gun and stacks of cash inside. He's already calculating. Callum checks in on the pair he pulled out of the vampire nest, and the news is bad. Lucy drops it flat. They're in Gar's hands now. The people Callum risked everything to rescue have been handed back into the system he's been running from. He grits his teeth, the regret written all over his face. He should have known better. He should have done more. And Lucy, steady as ever, asks how he wants to be paid. 2 kilograms of gold as a retainer. Lucy's eyes light up. She tells him he just bought himself the best night of her life. The next day brings a new scene. A bookstore, sunlight, and a shift in energy as a dark-haired girl with a ponytail cheers on a young man working through a magic exercise. The tone is warmer here, but Callum's world never stays warm for long. In the library, something extraordinary happens. A young woman with a headband channels a surge of glowing blue energy through her hands, and she can barely contain it, crying out in amazement. Professor Brown, silver-haired and composed, raises an apologetic hand as the magic almost gets away from everyone. When she asks where the enchantment came from, he deflects with a vague answer, a friend's books. That friend, of course, is Callum. The study session deepens. Gayle, the young woman with the headband, describes her telekinesis experiments with infectious enthusiasm, dropping technical terms that leave her purple-haired study companion completely lost. She's been working with an asymmetric framework and inversion circulation, producing results that genuinely excite her. Around the table, curiosity mingles with mild overwhelm. This is what magic looks like when it's being pushed to its limits by someone hungry to learn. Callum recounts his late start to Lucy over the phone, and she responds with a story about a cricket that touched her finger and made her scream. He chuckles. For just a moment, the weight lifts. But then the scene cuts. Elsewhere, a very important meeting is beginning. An older man with a white beard glares into a dim room, furious that someone dared arrive late. The laughter dies in the viewer's chest. Into the shadowed room strides a figure in a flowing crimson robe and striking red shoes, Anton Lavine, master of the Minneapolis vampires. The older silver-haired man had assured everyone he'd arrive. He does. But the welcome is anything but warm. A man with a long gray beard identifies Lavine with cold formality, and the tension in the room crackles like a live wire about to snap. The meeting room erupts. Lavine hisses at the assembly, slamming his fist down with a crack that echoes through the chamber. An elder with white hair glares back, teeth clenched. Then a blue-skinned giant with the bearing of a king cuts through the noise, King Raven, ruler of the hardest Fae, demanding they get on with it. Every faction represented here carries centuries of grudges, and somehow they all have to work together. The silver-haired elder calls the meeting to order under the authority of the Archmagus. His voice is calm, but the words he delivers are anything but. There is an assassin among them, and it is time they act. Around the polished wooden table, 3 of the world's most dangerous beings, Vampire Master, Fae King, Elder Mage, lean in. The title card drops, Paranoid Mage. The stakes have never been higher. Callum rolls back into Wynut alone on his motorcycle under a street lamp at dusk. He looks at the welcome sign like it's an old face he wasn't sure he'd see again. He murmurs a quiet greeting to the town, wondering if he has the Langley family to thank for keeping the area intact. The nostalgia is real, but so is the underlying tension. He doesn't linger. He can't afford to. Callum finds his stash exactly where he left it, gold bars and cash, untouched in the dark. Purple mist swirls around him as he takes stock of what he couldn't carry the first time. But the relief is short-lived. A shadowy silhouette of a woman flickers through his thoughts. Lady is hunting him. He packs what he can and reminds himself, extra careful now. Every second counts. Callum tells himself he's just going to skip town, no goodbyes, no risks. But he can't help it. One quick peek through the cafe window just to confirm everyone's safe. Inside, Clara is laughing, busy, alive, asking for another round of steaks like the world isn't falling apart. He watches from the dark, duffel bag in hand. And then he asks himself the question he already knows the answer to. What am I doing? Inside the cafe, the scene is almost painfully normal. Clara, blonde, bubbly, moving with purpose, shows no trace of what she's been through. Chief Campbell watches her with quiet concern, asking if the nightmares are still happening. Another man answers gently. The vampire's charm appears to have wiped most of her memory. They're calling it lucky. But there's a purple mist near her, faint and unsettling. Is the luck holding, or is something still lingering? Something cuts through the cafe's warmth, a scent. Chief Campbell tenses, asking the young woman beside him if she smells it too. She slams the door shut just as a motorcycle engine roars outside and vanishes into the dark. Callum. He was close, too close. And he knows it, murmuring to himself that he has to stay away to keep them safe, even as every part of him wanted to walk through that door. Riding fast through the night, Callum asks Lucy for something big, the locations of every GAR teleportation circle. Lucy types rapidly, the clack of her keyboard barely keeping pace with the conversation. She admits surprise. She'd assumed that's how he was already getting around. He corrects her, close guess but not quite. The prominent families manage their own private circles, she warns. Getting those locations will be a much harder task. Callum zeroes in on a specific target, a teleportation circle sitting in the back of a mattress shop called Cloudlike, 500 feet away. The circles let GAR move across thousands of miles in moments, and they're locked down tight. Security wards, registration protocols, the works. He scopes the exterior in silence, tension radiating off every panel. This won't be a simple walk-in. Callum's gravikinesis leaves traces, bright signs of his path that could give him away. He studies the circle from a distance, his wide-eyed spatial sense straining to make out the details through the swirling magenta energy. The construction of this circle is unlike anything he can simply carve into a plate. It's more complex, and if he can't get close enough to read it properly, he may never crack it at all. A glowing purple orb hovers in Callum's hand as he sketches out a complex design on paper. This isn't a carving job, it requires actual construction. He says it aloud to himself, acknowledging the gravity of what he's taking on. Then, with quiet resolve, he turns toward a shimmering portal and declares that there's no point putting it off. Meanwhile, elsewhere, shadowy figures gather around a wooden table, the vampire threat still very much on everyone's minds. Back in the council chamber, Lavigne goes on the offensive, pointing an accusatory jeweled hand across the table, blaming the shifters for harboring an assassin. The white-haired elder slams his palms down, refusing to tolerate reckless accusations. An elf with pointed ears cuts through the chaos with a smirk, dismissing Lavigne's outburst as a tantrum. King Raven watches it all with cold, disapproving eyes. This room is supposed to be a council. Right now, it's a powder keg. The silver-haired man at the head of the table tries to redirect. They are here to discuss an extremely dangerous assassin, not to trade blame. A young dark-haired man in a black-collared jacket leans forward, pressing for actual leads. A pale figure in formal red and white traces a finger along the table's edge, skeptical that the assassin threat is truly resolved. Suspicion poisons every word in this room. The truth, whatever it is, remains buried. The elder with the braided white beard demands evidence. The silver-haired figure raises a finger to his lips, contemplative, secretive, and poses a single loaded question. Does this seem familiar to any of you? The title card punctuates the moment, Paranoid Mage. The scene cuts back to Callum on his motorcycle, asking Lucy for teleportation circle locations. Two conversations, two worlds, both circling the same terrifying center. Callum rides hard through the city, dark helmet on, green eyes focused. Lucy explains that the major families maintain their own private circles, and that cracking those intel networks would be significantly harder. But she's already typing, the clack of her keyboard filling the silence. A list of public GAR circles appears on Callum's phone. He guns the throttle. Every name on that list is a door, and he intends to open all of them. The council's chaos fades as Callum pulls up near May Jewelers, scanning the storefront with quiet intensity. According to the list Lucy sent, the nearest broker teleportation circle should be right here, hidden inside a jewelry store, of course. He sits on his motorcycle, pulling up a CAD design on his laptop, a recreation of the circle's layout sketched from memory. It's close to accurate, but without the original in front of him, close might not be close enough. Callum stares at his sketch design, acknowledging the gap in his knowledge. Even if the diagram is accurate, he still doesn't know how to actually construct the mechanism. Then purple energy begins to swirl. Someone's coming. He whispers the name before she even appears her. A woman in flowing purple robes strides forward and her wrist tattoo pulses with light, reacting to the circle's enchantment. He watches, cataloging every detail. She is, unknowingly, teaching him everything. The scene breaks into something almost tender, chibi-style illustrations explaining how a mage's tattoo functions as a unique identifier. It can register authority, confirm access, even track arrivals and departures. This is the architecture of Gar's control made visible. Back in the library's warm light, a woman in a vest and blouse asks if anyone has seen Professor Brown. Nobody has. And Callum, disguised as that very professor, is already somewhere he shouldn't be. Callum, as Professor Brown, nearly blows his cover by getting too absorbed in following Gayle through the library stacks. He catches himself just in time, reminding himself she was heading to meet him. They settle at a table with a warm VWOOM of magic between them, and she asks what they should tackle today. He tells her he needs to figure out some form of movement magic. The irony of the most wanted rogue mage teaching library sessions is almost funny. Almost. Gayle vents she wishes she were an elemental mage because half her requirements would basically handle themselves. Callum chuckles, remembering his own early frustrations with spell balls that turned out to be completely pointless. She demonstrates a swirl of fire-tinged magic with a playful purple aura and then turns the question back on him. As a gravity mage, does he know any movement magic? His expression shifts. He knew this question was coming. He just hoped it wouldn't come today. Callum hedges, yes, he knows the basics of gravity magic, but he's not confident it'll hold up against real scrutiny. Gayle leans in, asking to see a spell. He relents, adjusting the gravity on his chair with a wave of his hand. Purple light radiates outward with a VWOOM and a small miracle of levitation rises between them. Gayle's face lights up. He smiles back, careful, restrained. He could do so much more. He just can't show her how much. Callum tells her that what he just showed is only a fraction of his capabilities, that if he were well rested, he'd demonstrate something far more impressive. Gayle's eyes go wide. She immediately asks if he could teach her. He hesitates, then agrees, pulling out a dense foundational text he claims he first read as a young mage. 1 hour later, a lesson is underway. Callum, fugitive, portal mage, and now reluctant teacher, is in deeper than ever. Gayle asks, half-joking, if reading the book will teach her to fly. Callum tells her not to get ahead of herself, and then his phone rings. Lucy. He excuses himself casually, telling Gayle it's probably nothing. She watches him go, concern flickering across her face. On the other end, Lucy's voice is softer than usual, asking if it's a bad time. It isn't, but it's about to be. Lucy explains the situation carefully. 2 mages Callum rescued have become his legal responsibility under Gar's procedural law. The older man listening on the other end, Callum, in his Professor Brown guise, absorbs every word with a darkening expression. The word responsibility hits differently when you're already running from the same organization enforcing it, and the involvement of vampires in the equation makes it worse, much worse. The truth comes out and Callum's composure shatters. Gar followed procedure, and procedure meant handing the 2 people he rescued back to the vampires who were going to kill them. He demands names, his voice cracking with rage. Purple energy pulses around him. Lucy, pale and worried, listens as he channels everything into that one word, names. He's not planning ahead anymore. He's reacting. And that is the most dangerous version of Callum Wells. Callum stands before a sleek corporate building at dusk, to anyone passing by just another office tower. But he knows what's hidden beneath the glamours and wards. He stares up at it, light purple eyes calm on the surface, storm underneath. He tells himself to think carefully. One wrong move in this place and everything unravels. But the 2 people inside that system didn't get a choice. And neither, it seems, does he. Callum's voice on the phone is sharp and unrelenting. He wants names, locations, the vampires, the guard department contacts, everything. Lucy, headset on and hands clasped, tries to pump the brakes. She tells him plainly, if he's planning something suicidal, he needs to reconsider. But Callum isn't asking for permission. He's asking for a list. And the purple aura building around him says he's not stopping until he gets it. The weight of his choices finally lands on Callum's shoulders fully, completely. These people are in danger because of him. He left them behind to protect himself. He says it out loud, and it sounds worse spoken than it did as a thought. Lucy listens quietly, then tells him he needs to pick his battles. Not because she doesn't care, but because a dead Callum saves nobody. He knows she's right. He hates that she's right. He backs down from the immediate charge, but he still wants the names. Not to act rashly, but to plan. The more he knows, the better he can prepare. Lucy agrees, warning him plainly, don't be stupid. He stands beside his motorcycle in the urban alley, clacking and whirring, giving way to quiet. He has Lucy to thank for pulling him back from the edge tonight. But he's already thinking about next time. Callum holds a glowing purple orb in his gloved hand, staring into its swirling core. He's honest with himself. His current level of magic isn't enough to raid a GAR office. Not yet. The scene transitions to the next day, a sunlit office where Professor Harry, cigar in hand, listens to oddly specific questions about young mages who never discovered their abilities. Callum is using study sessions to gather intelligence. Every question has a reason. Harry speculates, a child raised away from mages, starved of ambient vis in the air, might simply never have their magic kickstart. Callum leans forward, chin in hand, and asks the follow-up question with quiet precision. So someone could have magic lying dormant their whole life and never know it. Harry's never seen a case like that, but he supposes it could happen. Callum absorbs this with the careful neutrality of someone who's been that person. A young boy materializes in a reflective flash, holding a small purple orb, wondering what life would have been like if he'd been born into a mage family. Harry on the phone sounds bemused, almost suspicious, asking if there's a secret Callum isn't sharing. Callum deflects with a smile and a farewell. Then Lucy chimes in casually. Her entire family are mages except for her. Two people shaped by the magic they didn't fully inherit. Different paths, same world. Lucy teases him. His charm is intriguing, she says, and Chester's people are clearly underusing him if they're giving him grunt work. She flips it back. What's his family like? The hooded figure on the motorcycle stays quiet. She already suspects the answer. And a well-dressed man with a cowboy hat smiles in the background, enigmatic, charming, and clearly someone with history Callum hasn't unpacked yet. Callum admits it plainly, his personal life isn't interesting. Lucy doesn't push. Instead, she floats an idea with a grin, swap stories on their first date. He pauses at the bookstore, caught off guard by the word date. There's a vulnerability in that pause, brief, real, human. Lucy, headset on and bright-eyed, tells him his charm is intriguing. He's not used to being seen like that. It unsettles him in a way vampires and GAR agents never quite manage to. A ping on his phone, Lucy sends a selfie, peace sign, and a pink heart overlay, grinning at the camera. Callum checks it with a quiet expression that's hard to read. The scene shifts to Gayle in the library, head on the table, dramatically declaring her boredom with studying. Professor Brown, or rather Callum, tells her gently to remember why she's doing this, then suggests a break. She springs upright immediately. Some things are universal, magic world or not. Callum calls in to explain his absence, a brief emergency with a colleague, nothing more. Gayle, across from him in her dark vest and white blouse, waves it off warmly and tells him she owes him. If he ever needs a favor, just ask. He files that away carefully. Then he steers the conversation toward magical movement options, and a swirling purple orb appears behind him. He's already framing his next move as a research question. Always thinking. Always planning. Gayle mentions her father carries a home bond, a personal teleportation anchor. She can't give it to Callum, but he could examine it. Then she narrows her eyes and asks the question he was hoping to avoid. Is his friend a space mage? Because a space mage sharing information without a registered master would be in serious trouble. Callum gulps. The question hangs in the air between them, and neither of them moves to answer it. A dark-robed woman with striking blue eyes delivers the final warning of the chapter in hushed, absolute tones. Those tracked by Archmage Duval are never seen again. The camera lingers on a disheveled figure crumpled on the ground, shadows swallowing the details. It's not a rumor, it's a pattern. And Callum, fugitive rogue mage, the man the guild is hunting, has just been told exactly what fate waits for anyone who gets caught. Is he already in Duval's sights? Callum waves goodbye to Professor Brown with a casual promise he'll ask about the home bond next week. She watches him go from the balcony, worry etched into her expression. Down in the stone corridor, she mutters to herself about the tedium of Gar's teleportation circles. But it's not the circles that trouble her. It's him. She hopes, genuinely hopes, he doesn't get tangled up with the guild. Gayle Hargrave steps through a swirling veil of purple light, calm as ever, her dark hair falling perfectly over her dark vest. A silver-haired woman in a sleek black suit greets her, phone in hand, confirming her departure with the quiet efficiency of a professional. The modern hall hums with circular platforms and glowing sigils underfoot. This is the guild's world, orderly, watchful, beautiful in a way that hides its teeth. A tall, silver-haired man escorts Gayle through a gleaming corridor toward the private network, and something catches her attention. The private circles have been busy, more traffic than she's ever seen. The man shrugs it off, saying travel through Gar's halls has been heavy lately. Gayle's response is a single word, interesting, but her teal eyes say something far more. Back at House Hargrave, Gayle is welcomed home by the silver-haired Jameson, who asks about her study session with the warmth of a lifelong servant. She admits she enjoys her study partner, but the endless requirements placed on her feel like theater, not education. Jameson reminds her gently, she is the future of House Hargrave. High expectations come with that. She stands by the wardrobe in silence, thinking. The weight of that name hangs in the room. In the refined sitting room, a woman in a yellow dress brings troubling news. Someone is stirring up conflict over the vampire hunter situation. The young man across from her, Mr. Hargrave, barely looks up from his newspaper, reacting with a smirk at the mention of a vampire hunter. But when she says Archmage Hargrave may visit tonight, his casual demeanor tightens. Then she leans forward and asks him for a favor. His eyes lift. Now he's paying attention. She wants to borrow the home bond, just to show it to her study group. She won't activate it, she promises, hands clasped together with barely concealed eagerness. Mr. Hargrave considers it from across the warm wooden table, then agrees with a quiet smile for her. He'll allow it. She thanks him with genuine warmth. Then the butler announces dinner is ready, and the domesticity of the moment almost makes you forget what that home bond actually is. Now Gayle sits across from her study partner, a silver-haired man in a fitted gray suit and glasses, explaining that she can only borrow the home bond for a few hours. He takes it graciously. He tells her that being able to examine the enchantment at all is more than enough. Then he begins breaking it down. An enchanted plate, a personalized ring, coded to her grandfather's wrist identification. His tone is calm, but behind the glasses his mind is working fast. Gayle examines the home bond, noting that while it looks simple, the inner workings must be extraordinarily complex. Her study partner, Callum, using his spatial senses, theorizes that only a master could have crafted it. Then he says something that stops her cold. He can see hidden layers of the enchantment that a normal mage wouldn't even know existed. His ring glows with a faint purple light as he speaks. He's not guessing. He's seeing through it. Meanwhile, in a rustic shifter pub, a bartender and a couple of patrons trade observations about their unusual clientele. It takes a lot to stand out in a biker town full of shifters, but apparently someone has. Back in the study room, Callum snaps out of his focus and apologizes. He got lost in thought. Gayle smiles, gracious as always. Whatever he discovered in those hidden enchantments, he's not sharing it yet. On a city street, two investigators trade frustration over a trail gone cold. The blond man in a light coat lights a cigarette and exhales bitterly, one assassin, evading the entire magical world. His dark-haired partner in black voice what he won't. The trail is getting colder every day. They may never find them. The word pitiful hangs in the air, but underneath the frustration is something closer to fear. The silver-haired investigator in the gray suit lays out his theory: criminals rarely stay still forever. They make moves, and moves create mistakes. The man with the weapon listens without blinking. The logic is cold and patient. They may not slip up tomorrow or the day after, but eventually they will. And if he had to bet, he'd wager the culprit has allies. Allies who can be found. Allies who can be used as pressure. Gayle reflects quietly against the stone wall while Callum, sleeves rolled up, beige shirt, completely focused, works on something unexpected. He's been using a laser cutting service. It took a few tries, but he thinks he's got it right this time. He holds up a ring. If his calculations are correct, this should be a functional home bond. All that remains is flooding it with spatial vis. The energy around his hand begins to pulse. Purple tendrils of energy swirl around his hand in slow, deliberate spirals. He narrates his own process with focused calm. Once the enchantment is fully connected, it will activate automatically, routing him straight to a receiver plate he's hidden in a bathroom. A glowing circular sigil blazes with intricate detail. He's almost there. In a clean, quiet bedroom somewhere nearby, the receiver plate waits. The spell is nearly complete. And then slam, swoosh. Callum lands hard, grimacing with dark humor as he examines his own awkward arrival. He'll need to work on his landing, but the ring worked. He holds it up, gold, functional, and entirely self-made. Then comes the thought that changes everything. Spatial magic isn't as complicated as Gar wants people to believe. Archmage Duval has kept its full potential locked behind her jurisdiction. He's starting to realize just how deliberate that is. In a guild meeting space, figures in suits gather on a balcony above. The silver-haired man looks tense as someone raises the specter of a rogue agent, not just any rogue, but one capable of disposing of guild members as easily as pawns. A cloaked figure pulses with swirling dark energy, tilting his head with calm menace. He announces it himself. Right now, he might just be the biggest threat their operation has ever faced. No one disagrees. In the warm, book-lined study, Gayle cradles a glowing blue orb between her palms and hopes out loud that her spell holds. And it does. She lights up genuine, unguarded delight. Callum watches with his glasses slightly fogged from proximity and grins, telling her it's fantastic. She keeps it steady, noting the shield isn't the most powerful she can manage, but it should do for today. For a moment, there's no guild, no danger, just two people genuinely proud of what they built together. The warm spell breaks gently. Gayle notices a bruise on Callum's arm and immediately shifts into concern, asking if he's all right in that direct, unhesitating way of hers. He seems caught off guard, downplays it, insists he'll be fine, but she's already decided. She tells him it would be easy for her to heal, and her voice leaves no room for argument. The cozy study, the wooden shelves, the quiet warmth between them, and underneath it, the quiet cost of his double life. A glowing orb of blue healing energy blooms in Gayle's palm as she works on Callum's arm. She tells him it's the least she can do after everything he's given her. Then privately, she notices something: his arms are stronger than she realized. Callum watches her with his supportive, glasses-framed gaze and tells her she's a natural. The bruise will fade in minutes, and something unspoken passes between them, gratitude maybe, or the beginning of trust. Gayle suddenly remembers herself. She needs to schedule her exam before the knowledge slips away. She makes for the door, but Callum stops her just for a moment. He tells her not to let them get her down. He believes in her. She turns back, meeting his eyes, and says simply, "Thank you, Professor." Then the scene shifts. The next day, Gayle arrives in a green tracksuit to a high-tech testing facility, clipboard-bearing official waiting. The exam has begun. In the sleek training facility, Gayle stands in a fitted green outfit as the examiner calls out tasks one by one: light, movement, shields. She delivers each with fluid precision, blue energy flowing from her hands in luminous waves. The examiner takes notes without expression. Then he says it. Let's move to an offensive attack. The atmosphere tightens. This is the part she's been dreading, and the part she's been quietly preparing for. Gayle plants her feet, arms outstretched, blue flames spiraling around her with a sound like wind cutting through steel. Across from her stands a shadowy training construct, featureless, still, utterly unreadable. She mutters to herself she's practiced this. Then she unleashes. The construct cracks, then shatters, kaboom. Debris flies in every direction and the dim training room fills with light. She did it. But what exactly did she just reveal? It worked. Gayle's face breaks into a wide, uncontained smile, a healing attack, she explains, designed to cause instant onset of something unusual. The bald examiner raises an eyebrow mid-note. His pen slows. She asks if something's wrong, already sensing the shift in the room. He doesn't answer directly. He just tells her to wait here, something in her attack needs checking. His tone is calm, but his expression says this is no longer a routine test. Gayle sits alone on a blue bench in the industrial testing room, fidgeting, counting the minutes. She's getting nervous. Then two figures appear at the edge of her vision, a tall man in a white suit with tousled blonde hair and a woman in black with vivid blue hair. They greet her almost too casually. The blonde man says the healing attack isn't his jurisdiction, but he's very interested in it. Then he asks, did she come up with the idea herself? She hesitates. The blonde man in the gray suit clarifies the technique originates with a Professor Brown. The woman in the green jumpsuit goes still. She asks, voice barely steady, are we in trouble? The shadowy figure with sharp dark features and black gloves smiles. It's not a reassuring smile. He tells her she very well may be. Then comes the demand that strips away any pretense of a routine interview. Tell him everything she knows about Professor Brown. Meanwhile, Lucy is thoroughly entertained. Sprawled in her gaming chair surrounded by screens, she updates Callum Gar is still furious about the ghost assassin they can't find. She finds the whole thing hilarious to watch. Callum, across town with a backpack over one shoulder and a purple sweater on his back, listens with a quieter energy. He never wanted the attention, and right now, while they're all chasing a ghost, he's still moving, still planning. Callum asks Lucy a quick question. What can she tell him about House Hargrave? Her reaction is immediate. Don't tell her he's involved with them. He explains he's met one Gayle and just wants to know who she really is. Lucy's fingers hit the keyboard. The blonde girl with pink headphones goes to work, pulling up everything she has on a 22-year-old mage named Gayle Hargrave. The faint sound of keystrokes fills the room. Whatever she finds, it's clearly not good. Lucy puts down the cigarette for just a moment and says it plainly, that's not good. The Hargraves aren't just powerful, they're one of the most dangerous mage families in existence. The screen fills with images, an ancient mansion, figures in dark uniforms, an elderly patriarch unleashing martial magic with raw, terrifying force, and then Gayle in a flowing white gown, casting healing magic with quiet grace. She is their newest prized commodity, and Callum has been teaching her. Callum wonders aloud if Gayle's unusual magical lineage, the healing and the power, was some kind of accident. Lucy shakes her head. Houses don't do accidents. More likely it was a deliberate political alliance, an engineered bloodline designed to create something new. An angelic figure shimmers through the data, luminous, winged, breathtaking. And the warning lands like cold water. Gayle is the Hargrave's prized asset. If her grandfather's precious granddaughter gets hurt, consequences will be biblical. Callum's face goes pale. An archmage. He thanks Lucy with real feeling. He doesn't know what he'd do without her. She waves it off, tells him to be careful out there. He's already thinking through his options, already calculating risk. The situation is more serious than he thought. He mutters that he said goodnight earlier, like he's already mentally saying goodbye to somewhere or someone. Then he shoulders his bag and prepares to move. 3 teams check in across a darkened corridor, Alpha, Bravo, Charlie, all armed and in position. In a separate room, a blonde man in a tan suit and a dark-haired woman with teal-streaked hair discuss the operation with barely concealed unease. Archmage Hargrave could level the entire city on his own, and they've deployed this much firepower to catch one rogue assassin. The question hangs. The implication is clear. They know exactly who they're really hunting. A gray-bearded man with a commanding presence watches from cover while his blonde partner tracks their target using wind magic, refusing binoculars entirely. He locates the mark, a young man with a gray backpack heading north on Kent Avenue. The surveillance woman at the control station reports contact. Then nothing. The signal vanishes. Target has disappeared. But then Team A calls it back. Contact reestablished. Callum Wells doesn't know he's already surrounded. He teleported. The blonde man in the suit blinks. Intel had him down as a gravity mage. The teal-streaked woman doesn't have time for confusion. Take the shot, she snaps. Don't give him time to move again. The armored figure with the missile launcher doesn't hesitate. KABO. The explosion tears through the alley, and Callum, caught mid-step in a casual blue shirt, reacts with the purest, most unguarded shock he's shown yet. Something is very wrong. Callum recognizes it instantly. Gas. Something in the air is eating at his energy, sapping his power at the source. He tries to use his magic and it doesn't respond. The look on his face isn't just fear, it's fury at himself. He crouches, straining, and the effort shows in every line of his body. Across the scene, a second operative in brown gear calls it in. Team B is moving in. The net is closing. Glowing energy snaps around Callum's body and the tactical team erupts. They got him. A man in a white suit strides forward with the calm authority of someone who expected this outcome all along. Good work, everyone. They'll take it from here. Then the mood shifts entirely. An elderly man with long silver hair and a golden-accented robe appears, and when he raises one crackling hand, every operative in the courtyard goes rigid. His granddaughter was touched. He wants the one responsible. The Archmage's fury radiates off him like heat, but the blonde operative holds his ground, urging calmly that the suspect is detained and not going anywhere. Please, allow them to complete their investigation. The restrained figure in the purple outfit lies on the ground, barely conscious. Two heavily armed guards flank the scene. Archmage Hargrave does not look placated. He looks like a man deciding whether this building needs to exist by morning. The blonde operative in the light suit instructs his team to search the captive's pockets. They need something connecting him to the vampire incidents. An operative holds up a chain of small, familiar objects, ball bearings. The operative waits for a reaction. The blonde man's expression moves from casual to focused in less than a second. His voice drops. He tells the room quietly, they've found their killer. The pieces just clicked into place. Callum, still half-crouched, still fighting the anti-magic gas, still looking like the world is spinning, watches a man in a light purple coat hold up his ball bearings with a smirk. Another figure in gold-trimmed robes echoes the conclusion in a voice like a verdict. We've found our killer. Whatever plan Callum had, it didn't account for this. The evidence is in their hands. His identity is on the table, and he still can't use his magic. Cold light, hard chair, blue-gray walls that feel designed to shrink a person down. Callum blinks himself back to consciousness in a stark interrogation room, hair damp with sweat, dark shirt clinging. He murmurs a confused question, where is he? Then it registers. Then comes the gut-punch thought behind it, another interrogation room. Not his first, not the last. But from the way his hands sit on that table, this one feels different. Piece by piece, Callum reconstructs what happened. One moment he was heading to meet Gayle. The next, men in suits ambush darkness. He curses himself for the carelessness. He heard a sound and assumed it was just Gayle or a shop owner. In a dimly lit library setting that flickers through his memory, he sees how easily he walked into it. The cuffs on his wrists are real. The regret in his eyes is raw. The door opens. A striking blonde man in a tailored, light-colored suit strides in alongside a dark figure with pointed ears and a portfolio under one arm. He greets the prisoner pleasantly, "Hello, Mr. Brown." Then he pauses. Or should he say, "Callum Wells." Callum stiffens. The man explains it was fairly obvious in hindsight they were hunting a rogue space mage and a master assassin at the same time. Turns out both trails led to the same person. The blonde operative settles in while his partner, a woman with pointed ears and turquoise-streaked hair, all precision and cold authority, takes over the questioning. She jumps straight to it. What was Callum's involvement in the vampire operation? He fires back. What makes them think he was involved at all? She tells him calmly. The ball bearings gave it away. Now she wants to know the why. Wisps of anti-magic gas still linger in the room like a reminder of who holds the power here. Callum leans into it. He asks the question back. Did anyone stop to wonder if the vampires were abducting people? The turquoise-haired interrogator doesn't blink. That's irrelevant, she tells him. He pushes harder. From where he sits, the real question isn't why he acted. It's why Gar didn't. Across the table, the blonde operative takes a slow drag from a cigarette and smirks. He's not rattled. If anything, he looks entertained. The atmosphere darkens. A rogue mage in shadow, cigarette smoke curling around him, leans in and makes the stakes explicit. Callum is a rogue mage, and putting him down is the job. Two officials flank the table, one blonde and short-haired, the other bald and utterly unreadable, confirming the weight of what Callum is facing. A heavy sentence. He pushes back. Under what pretense is he even being held? But the certainty in their faces tells him they don't need a pretense. A document lands on the table. The blonde operative shifts gears. They mostly care about the vampire attacks, but there's a more specific grievance. Where did Callum learn the techniques he passed on to Gayle Hargrave? Callum insists he only taught her basic things. The gray-skinned figure behind him radiates menace. Something about those techniques has alarmed people far above the interrogation room. An offensive healing spell designed by a rogue mage, that's not a minor detail. That's a threat. The turquoise-haired interrogator presses. What exactly was obvious to him about the technique? He says it seemed clear, any doctor would know it. She pins him on that. The blonde operative cuts deeper. Callum's choice of methods has created a catastrophic situation for Gayle. His credentials are inadequate. The combination is a violation. Callum looks genuinely confused. How much trouble can she really be in? The silence that follows answers it. Callum's voice rises. Every doctor would know this. This wasn't some ancient secret. But the turquoise-haired elf doesn't flinch, just leans back with infuriating calm. Then BZZT. Electricity crackles through Callum's restraints and he shouts in raw, involuntary pain. The blonde operative steps in coolly. Easy now, don't aggravate the seniors. Callum breathes hard, defiant still. But the electricity served its point. And then comes the next question. Was he trying to recruit Gayle for his organization? Callum explains through clenched teeth that he saw someone struggling and thought he'd help. That's all. The blonde operative doesn't buy it. He tells Callum that if he wants to help Gayle, he should be forthcoming. Callum calls it what it is, using an innocent woman as a bargaining chip. The blonde man doesn't even deny it. He smiles. You'd be surprised how serious false threats can be, he says. The implication is crystal clear. Gayle's danger is not false. And then Callum smirks. Not the smile of a man who's given up, the smile of a man who has been waiting. He tells his interrogators they should have wondered why he was talking to them at all. The blonde operative snaps back. There are no portals in this room. His enchantments have been stripped. Callum agrees. He says he doesn't need a portal. The pale man's confidence flickers for just a moment. Callum has been biding his time, and the time is now. Chaos? The turquoise-haired operative shouts to hold him down as purple energy surges from Callum's body. He grins and wishes them good luck. The blonde operative lunges, hurling green energy after him. Get back here. A thunderous bang splits the room. The blonde man spins, eyes wide and furious, shouting at empty air. His dark-haired partner stands stunned. Callum Wells is gone. And the operative's next command doesn't hide how badly they've just failed. All available agents now. The order goes out across every channel. Find Callum Wells. A dark-haired operative with power radiating from him shouts it into the air, purple magic swirling around his form in furious arcs. The blonde man with platinum hair launches green energy after a ghost, screaming for him to come back. But Callum is already somewhere else, somewhere he planned. Somewhere they don't know about. He escaped a sealed interrogation room, outwitted Gar's best agents, and vanished. But the entire magical world is now looking for him. Where does he go from here? The command goes out like a thunderclap. Callum Wells is gone, and the agents left standing in that sealed room can barely process it. Fists slam on tables. Voices crack with fury. Someone asks if they checked him for implants. They did. But Callum had one installed anyway, something so rare it defied their protocols entirely. He didn't just escape. He made them look like amateurs. The archmage with reddish-brown hair is not a man who tolerates failure, and right now, he's barely containing his rage. A spatial mage was in their custody and nobody notified him. Nobody. Someone floats the idea of blood tracking, a 10-mile radius through sunrise. But Callum will be long gone by then. The elegant blonde operative delivers the brutal verdict. They're starting from square one. Inside a formal conference room, two senior figures dissect the fallout. The man in the blue suit and cap raises something more disturbing than Callum's escape. The young healer Callum allegedly corrupted. His partner in the purple jacket connects the dots with cold precision. Healing magic, turned offensive, can bypass a mage's vis shield entirely. Most mages never even consider that possibility. Callum apparently did. Blue magical energy crackles through the air as Gar's finest wrestle with what they've just learned. An auburn-haired operative channels power through her hand, demonstrating exactly what a spatial mage can do in the blink of an eye. A senior figure in a navy uniform turns to an archmage in purple robes, demanding intelligence. The archmage's answer is stunning in its arrogance. Spatial magic is peaceful, not dangerous. Perhaps, he admits quietly, they've just been proven wrong. The archmage herself enters the frame, dark attire, a striking red jewel at her chest, dark mystical energy swirling around her like a second skin. The nervous operative in the blue suit and cap sweats visibly as she fixes him with a stare that could freeze fire. Her instruction is simple and devastating. Do better. He nods, gulping. Outside, the sky has turned purple. Something ominous is coming. Callum stands alone in a forested area, dark trees closing in around him like silent witnesses. He exhales and takes stock. Before everything fell apart, he had the foresight to cache emergency supplies across the state. Clothes, weapons, cash, even his textbooks. He can start over. But the question gnawing at him isn't how, it's how he let it get this far. Gar knows everything about him now. Everything. A portal tears open with a sound like thunder VWOOM, and Callum steps through, bag slung over his shoulder, into the outside world. He finds a phone booth and makes a call. On the other end, Lucy answers with the energy of someone who didn't expect to hear from him again. She's simultaneously thrilled and horrified. She tells him he started a firestorm, then corrects herself, actually, it's been dead quiet, which somehow sounds worse. The conversation between Callum and Lucy takes on the warmth of two people who have been through too much together to pretend otherwise. She teases him about his new reputation. Apparently, escaping a sealed Gar interrogation room earns you a certain kind of notoriety. He asks about enchanting supplies, permanent ones. She confirms what he already suspected. Everything useful is locked behind guild regulation. He lost most of his supplies on the run. He's rebuilding from scratch. Callum thanks Lucy and moves to hang up, but she stops him with a warning that lands like a cold hand on his shoulder. Archmage Duval, furious. The final panel says everything words can't. A figure in dark robes, red gem gleaming, swirling energy coiling around an outstretched hand like it answers to her alone. This isn't just an organization searching for him anymore. This is something personal. Callum promises Lucy he'll be careful, and you can hear in his voice that he means it, even if careful has a different definition for him than most people. Later that night, deep in the woods, he sets up camp. A tent, a lamp, a laptop glowing against the darkness. He pulls up his research materials, mages, shifters, vampires, dragonbloods. The hidden world he stumbled into. He mutters to himself that he's approaching the territory now. He has no idea how right he is. By lamplight, Callum digs into what he knows about the Fae, and it unsettles him. Their magic doesn't follow the same rules as Vis. They can do things that normal magic theory says are impossible. Three fae figures dance across his mental image, one in pink with fairy wings, one in yellow, one in red, beautiful and utterly alien. Callum notes they aren't inherently more powerful, but their diversity makes them unpredictable. He tells himself to tread carefully. Then something rustles in the dark. In the enchanted darkness, a tall elf with light hair and pointed ears stares into the water, his expression grave. Two pixies flutter nearby, one in pink, one in yellow, their delicate wings catching the faint light. The elf identifies them quietly, treefolk, pixies, but what catches his attention isn't their presence. It's what's around their necks. Some kind of jewelry, something that doesn't belong. The mood shifts from curious to deeply cautious. Callum's face goes pale. Against a stark red background, his brow furrows and sweat breaks across his skin as the realization hits him. Those aren't just fae accessories. He leans in. The elf beside him, wearing a fur-lined cloak, points it out with eerie calm, something around their necks, some kind of jewelry. And then Callum sees what it actually is. Human ears. A cold wave of horror washes over him. The purple-haired sinister figure stares with a mocking smile as the grotesque truth sinks in. Human ears, trophies. Somewhere else in the dark forest, two young men are running for their lives. One in a green jacket urging the other forward, the exhausted boy in blue barely able to keep going, breath ragged, legs failing. They don't know what's hunting them, but now Callum does, and the clock is running. Callum grabs Hannah and pulls her through the forest, his voice urgent and low. They have to keep moving. She asks why. Why are they doing this? He doesn't have an answer, only a truth. If they stop, they'll end up like the others. A pile of bodies glimpsed in shadow confirms it. Then jarringly, the scene cuts to a sunlit playground, a small boy asking his father if he can go on the slide. A memory. Callum's memory. 7-year-old Callum on a playground, watching a bigger kid claim the jungle gym as his own territory. The boy shoves another kid off without hesitation. Young Callum just watches. Even then, that instinct to stay out of it, to make it not his problem, was already there. But the scene doesn't let him off the hook. Someone is about to remind him that doing nothing is still a choice. The bully sits atop the jungle gym, laughing down at the boy he knocked off. Young Callum takes his turn on the slide, declaring it none of his business. Then a stern adult appears, bearded, serious, and the question lands. Callum, what are you doing? The boy who was shoved cries loudly on the ground. And Callum, comfortable on his slide, has to reckon with being the one who watched and said nothing. Young Callum squares up against his father's disappointment, defensive and confused. Why should he have to say something? He didn't push anyone. But his father's response cuts right through the deflection. Callum is bigger. He could have helped. He didn't. The crying boy on the ground isn't the lesson. Callum is. This childhood memory isn't just backstory. It's the blueprint of every choice Callum has struggled with since. The memory crystallizes into a single, resonant truth spoken in his father's voice, worn into his bones. It is your job to help those who need it. Remember that. Present-day Callum presses his fingers to his temple, wrestling with himself. He's a fugitive. He's exhausted. He has every reason to open a portal and disappear. But there are fae out here hunting humans like sport, and he was raised better than this. A figure in a brown hoodie stands at the edge of a darkened landscape, shadowy shapes massing in the distance. Every instinct says run. Open a portal. Get the hell out. That was supposed to be the plan, always the plan, but his father's words won't let him go. The portal shimmers at the edge of possibility, and Callum makes a different call entirely. The hunt, as far as he's concerned, is on. At the edge of the tree line, the fae hunting party moves with chilling confidence. A muscular blonde man with no shirt, a red-haired woman wielding a sword, a mischievous young elf who says with genuine delight that he enjoys the chase. They have until sundown to finish the wild hunt. The humans can only run so far. They're not wrong, but they haven't accounted for Callum. His father's voice one more time. Bad guys win when good people stand by and do nothing. Callum's fist clenches. A mysterious figure in a hoodie and sunglasses steps into motion with quiet resolve. He almost talks himself out of it. Almost. Who am I kidding, he thinks. A rustle in the undergrowth. And then Callum Wells, rogue mage, most wanted man in the magical world, sets off hunting the hunters. Callum crouches low, dark hooded cloak pulled tight, purple accents barely visible in the shadows. His spatial sense has expanded to nearly 2,000 feet, a sphere of perception that moves with him through the forest. He tracks the Fae group from the edge of that range, careful, deliberate. But there's a problem. Those Fae agents can hide their magical signatures, and if they can sense his, this whole plan falls apart before it starts. 24 bullets. Callum holds his pistol with the careful awareness of someone who knows exactly how much he has to work with. This isn't a kill mission, the goal is to find the humans first. Get them to safety. The forest opens near the mountains and something clicks in his mind. Of course. The mountain caves. Networks of tunnels running under the ground, places where frightened people could disappear and wait out a hunt. He has a plan forming. Cave networks through the mountains, imperfect but survivable. Callum could stash people down there, buy them time until sunrise ends the hunt. But even as he maps it out, a better idea sparks at the edges of his thinking. Nearby, the exhausted boy in blue collapses to the forest floor, gasping that he can't run anymore. His body has given out. Whatever Callum's plan is, it needs to happen now. In the dense forest, the young man in the green jacket tries to hold it together, suggesting they hide, trying to reassure the girl gripping his arm. Then a voice cuts through the trees. Calm, absolute, found you. The shadowy figure doesn't announce itself, doesn't explain, it simply arrives. The boy's hands begin to shake. They've been running this entire time and it was never enough. Red eyes glow in the shadows. The young man throws his hand up, stay back. But Callum appears first, masked, hooded, dropping to one knee before them with his hands visible. He tells them simply, he's just trying to help. But they need to follow his directions closely. The girl in the blue denim jacket looks terrified. The young man looks like he doesn't know who to be more afraid of, the red-eyed thing in the dark or the masked stranger in front of them. No time for explanations. Callum gives them a direction: go ahead, turn left into the valley, look for the pine tree. The young man in the green jacket asks if Callum can come with them. He can't. Going with them would mean his magical signature moves alongside theirs and the Fae would find them all. So he sends them ahead, alone, into the dark. Trust me, he says. I'll look out for you. Callum watches from a distance as the group moves through the forest, the light-haired young man in the green jacket nodding, steeling himself, the anxious girl beside him doing the same. They'll go ahead. They trust him. And Callum stays back, alone in the dark, managing the magical signature problem the only way he knows how, carefully. He'll meet them on the other side, if the Fae don't find him first. The two survivors push through the last stretch of forest, lungs burning, legs barely cooperating. The girl in the light blue denim jacket admits she can barely move. The boy asks if this is the place. He hopes so. She asks the harder question, who is this guy? Can they really trust him? Before anyone can answer, a swirling vortex tears open in front of them. She screams. They both fall. And then silence. On the other side, Callum, now in a red hoodie and mask, is already there waiting. The girl looks around, stunned, catching her breath. She says thank you with a sincerity that cuts through the chaos. Callum tells her not to worry about it, then asks the question that matters. How did they end up in this mess? The young man answers quietly. Wild hunt. Dark energy pulses around Callum's clenched fist. Now he understands exactly what he's dealing with. Callum's voice drops to something cold and final. He's heard enough. There's only one way to deal with monsters like this, and he's going to put them down. Permanently. Purple energy swirls behind him, the declaration hanging in the air like a death sentence. Somewhere in the background, a Fae voice wonders aloud if they should be worried about the approaching morning. They should be worried about something far closer than the dawn. The Fae hunting party gathers in the shadowed forest, the silver-haired elf, the red-haired woman with tribal accessories, both radiating predatory amusement. She revels in it. Tricking mortals is half the fun. They move to regroup and then someone asks, where have the pixies gone? The answer comes not in words but in a roaring dark portal splitting the trees apart and two monstrous twisted tree creatures emerging from the void. The elf's confidence shatters. He shouts, "Move!" The young man in the green jacket and the girl in light blue denim watch in alarm as a dark portal churns and twisted branch-like tendrils reach through it. A moss-covered figure dashes toward them with an urgent command, "Report to the monarchs." Then a thunderous BAMM shakes the earth as the portal's energy surges outward. Whatever Callum just unleashed into this forest, the Fae weren't ready for it. The red-haired Fae woman screams, "Who dares attack Fae royalty?" Beside her, the white-haired figure conjures a magical aura, scanning for the threat. A skeletal tree creaks to life from the shadows, ancient and terrible, its limbs spreading like a threat made physical. Something is here, something disrupting the hunt from within, and the Fae haven't found it yet, but they're looking hard. A dark, twisted creature pulls back and hurls a projectile straight at Callum VWOOM, and it misses by inches. Kaboom! The detonation erupts near the water, sending a geyser into the moonlit sky. Callum exhales hard. That was a close one. But even as he catches his breath, he's already processing. He managed to portal several Fae away before the others noticed. Not all of them. One of those Fae guys could sense his magical signature. He's running out of time. The silver-haired elf shakes his head. The portal was too ambitious. He only managed to catch one of the Fae. Not enough. Perched nearby in the shadows, Callum weighs his options with mounting dread. He needs to get in and get out, but one of the Fae can already sense him. A green vine-like tendril creeps toward him through the darkness. His window is closing. He mutters one word, and in this forest, surrounded by Fae royalty with trophies made of human ears, one word says everything. Darkness. Crimson swirls through the black. Purple lightning fractures the void. Callum Wells' fugitive rogue mage, the man who escaped a sealed Gar interrogation room and came back to save strangers in a forest he had no business being in, is cornered. The Fae know he's here. Gar is hunting him across the entire magical world. And somewhere out there, Archmage Duval is furious. What happens when they all close in at once?